Good evening, everyone. Happy Valentine's Day. And thank you all for taking time to come out and join us for our meeting of February 14, 2018. If you could all please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could the city clerk please call roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Jacobowski.
Here.
Councilmember Shepherd-Romney.
Here.
Councilmember Udi.
Here.
Vice Mayor Wong.
Here.
Mayor Talk.
Present.
Mayor Wayne.
Thank you. The agenda is posted 72 hours prior to each meeting at the following locations: City Hall, the Crowell Library, and the Recreation Department. The agenda is also posted online at our website. Prior to getting to public comments, I'm just going to advise everybody that unless you're going to do with a new camera in our okay. If you turn around, you can see that we are videotaping our meetings now at the request of various members of the public. The videotape will be available. This is really just an interim process as we try to figure out how to videotape and best to project that to the public. This will be available on YouTube, ultimately through a website or through instructions that are going to be provided to the public on our website, and so you can view it on YouTube after you get done looking at cat videos in car wrecks. So that is a new matter for us, and we appreciate everybody's concern in helping us put this out. Public comments. The City Council welcomes public input. Members of the public may address the City Council by completing a public comment card and giving it to the City Clerk prior to the meeting. At this time, the public may address the City Council on items that are not on the agenda. Pursuant to state law, the City Council may not discuss or take action on issues not on the meeting agenda. I reserve the right as mayor to place limits on duration of comments. Staff may be asked to follow up on such items. The time limit that we put out there for public comment at the outset is 3 minutes. So do we have any public comments on matters not on the agenda? Seeing none, the public section matter of our February 14th meeting is closed. And do I have a motion to waive further readings?
I move to waive further meetings.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. Let's start with the city manager's statement. Please, report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. As members of the public may recall, this is our new attempt to try to streamline things and get you some interesting information right up front. So this is the second meeting where we've moved the city manager's report up to the front of the meeting. So bear with me as I still kind of get used to what this experiment is like. I want to start off with a couple of wins that were very exciting. For me personally, I had my first public session with the community on January 12th, getting to know the city manager session. And there were some brave residents who came out and hung in there with me while I did a 44-minute bio of myself. So that was a little exhausting for all of us, I think. And then I had the opportunity to get some really good questions after that from members of the community. It was a fantastic, roughly hour and a half. I really appreciate everyone who came out, and we got such good feedback about it that we're going to continue. So the next dates will be sent out in the next recreation brochure that goes out, but I want to announce them here also. All of the meetings will, at least for the next 4, stay on Fridays at 9 o'clock, which is when this one was. We had really good response. And they will be held in the Barth Room at the Crowell Library, and this time there'll be 1 hour and no city manager bio. So you will not need to wait through the entire thing all over again. And so the next one will be on March 16th, then there'll be one on April 13th, May 11th, and June 15th. And we'll be posting those on the website, sending them out in the weekly briefing, and I hope to see you all there. Some of them will be just general FAQ sessions, I should say Q&A sessions. Come out and tell me what's on your mind. Others of them may be devoted to specific topics. pension, or whatever the topic of the day may be. So keep watch on our website, and I'll be updating that and announcing that as we go. Next, along with Councilmember Shepherd Romney, we did secure the strategic plan consultant, and we are underway, which is super exciting. So we began that today. A couple of the meetings with the council members took place, and we had our first community meeting, and we have our second community meeting tomorrow night at 7 p.m. over in the Barth Room at the Crowell Library. If you were not able to make today, it'd be great if you could make tomorrow. Come on out and tell us what's on your mind. I will give you a preview of some of the things that did not go well over the last month, which was the scheduling of these community meetings. They were not the best timing. We got word late in the game that the school district was closing down schools today at noon, so there were some traffic issues for people who were trying to get to that meeting, and I know that we may be missing people that went out of town, so that was unfortunate and not what we hoped for. So that was not such a great one this week. Our long-term financial planning committee is making some progress after a little bit of a rocky beginning, I think. We had a great conversation last week about pensions. I say great because we had good discussion, not necessarily great because we have outstanding solutions, but that was a good conversation. Another victory this past month, hopefully many of you were there. The Crowell Library had their 10th anniversary open house. Many amazing speakers. And a lot of fun was had, not so much by my 10-month-old, who started crying every time anybody applauded, so we ended up having to leave. But it was an excellent event, and congratulations to Irene and everybody over there. One of the other exciting things that we have coming up is our fire chief and our police chief are working with the school district to do an active shooter training at the high school. This is very exciting, as I understand that this is the first time that we've ever really done that. It is sad to say that this is timely and important, and my hat is off to the high school for being willing to do one of these sorts of things, and I'm excited that our chiefs are helping out with that. Last but absolutely not least, I think the biggest, most exciting long-term victory that we had over the last month is that we've begun the process of trying to re-envision some of our recreation programming. There have been lots of discussion, I think, over the last probably several years about what recreation programming should be in this community, and we've tackled that issue head on. We're getting started with it. The first conversation was with the Rec Commission last month. Councilmember Udy was there as the primary liaison to the commission. There'll be another meeting on February 26th, where we're going to continue that discussion, and we're hoping to get to a place where we have some resolution at the joint meeting with the Recreation Commission and the City Council at your April meeting. So lots of interesting ideas, and if you have some, we'd love to hear them. Some things that didn't go so well. As I mentioned, the scheduling of the community meetings did not go the way that we hoped that they would. I'm also sorry to report that we have had yet more audit findings from the past that have kind of come up and bit us a little bit. Some forms that weren't filed correctly, nothing that's too material, but findings are not good, and we shouldn't be having them, and we're still trying to correct those going forward. So those are things related to Measure R, Prop A and C, and we've been reporting those as they come and trying to correct them as we have the opportunity. There were some mistakes in tonight's agenda. Actually, there are a couple of mistakes in tonight's agenda. Most of them were corrected beforehand, although I'll get to another one a little bit later, so we apologize for that and any confusion that that might have caused. I think that's all I want to talk about at that point. I'll get to more later. Perhaps, most importantly in my world, a couple of weeks ago, the City Council met in closed session with me to do a performance evaluation as mandated by my contract, and I would say that we had a very good and thorough conversation, and a good discussion was had. And although the contents of a performance evaluation are confidential for public employee personnel rule reasons, I want to share with you the priorities that they gave me that we agreed that I would be working on for the next couple of months. And I should say that these are priorities for the next couple of months because once the strategic plan is completed, that's going to take over everything. So any priorities that we have prior to that will kind of be wiped away and superseded by whatever we agree in for the strategic plan. So anything that's important, I'm sure, will get transferred into that document. In the meantime, there were 6 concrete items that the council asked me to complete by the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. First is the strategic plan. So that item we'll hear more about a little bit later when we do the mid-year report, but that's one of the things that will be completed. The next thing is to put together a packet of key operating metrics, and I committed to the council that we have a rough draft of some items by March 1st, and then we'll do some fine-tuning over the next month or so. That's very exciting. Third is to make some significant progress and move forward on the historic preservation ordinance and a potential historic survey. That is coming. It is working its way through the Planning Commission, and that one will be on the council's agenda, as we understand it, on your March 14th meeting. So that's exciting. The next issue that I was asked to deal with is the issue of housing in a commercial zone. Sometimes this is referred to as multifamily housing, sometimes it's referred to as mixed use. Those aren't exactly accurate, but that kind of topic to address that. And that will be coming to the council at their Friday meeting on March 2nd. So we're moving on that quickly. There's also some direction to talk about a process change for any kind of demolition, which would be at least 51% or more demolition of a structure. That maybe we change that instead of it going to DRC, that it would go to the Planning Commission. So that'll actually be going to the Planning Commission for their first consideration at their February 28th meeting. And then last but not least, as the mayor said, I was directed to begin recording meetings. I think we all dig ourselves, we say things like videotape, I still say that. To record and then post, at least at this point, on YouTube, and then to consider a more permanent, good quality option through the budget cycle. So those are my priorities, and as you can see, we're already at work on them, and I appreciate that dialogue. So let's turn to tonight. Tonight you have a somewhat full agenda, although it's gotten a little bit lighter since the last time you saw this. We are pulling 2 items tonight. First item that we're pulling from consent is the item related to the contract amendment for the janitorial services, and we're not pulling that off consent, we're pulling that item off the agenda altogether. We're not ready to talk to you about that just yet. And then we have just noticed, thanks to the eagle eyes up there on the dais, our apology, and this is another loss for the last month, is if you are particularly focused on the disbursement report, which is item number 3, you will notice that although it should be for January 2018, it is actually the same one from last month, which means December of 2017. So this was our mistake, and I apologize, and we will, on the March agenda, have both the January and the February disbursements for discussions. I apologize for that. So item 3 will be pulled from the agenda as well. The key items for tonight, the first is the mid-year report. This will allow us to get a head start on the budget process. There'll be a short report for you. And Josh will be presenting, of course, our interim finance officer, and he and I are both available to answer any questions that you might have. It'll help us get a sense of where we are, where we're going, and get, as I said, a jump start on the budget. I should say it doesn't address everything that we're doing. It's just touching base on a few things. There are other things that we're still working on. We're looking at ways to bring you better efficiencies. We're looking at effective staffing models and those kinds of things. And you'll see that during the budget process, even if you don't see it in tonight's report. And excitingly, and probably most importantly, I will just give you the bottom line, which is that we are on track to come in on budget for everything at the end of the fiscal year. That's our good news. One of the other items you have in front of you tonight is the extension of the contract for the temporary accounting management services. As I think that you know, a permanent staffing model is coming. Normally those kinds of things come forward with the budget cycle, so we're waiting till the budget cycle to bring you those unless you decide you'd like to see it sooner. And so this will get us to the end of the budget when we can give you that appropriate staffing model for how we want to deal with finance moving forward. I should say that we're not happy about the cost or the price tag of this particular item, but we want to be able to continue to keep things moving in the right direction, continue to fix some of the problems that we've unearthed, and this is the best solution that we've been able to come up with for the moment. And then finally, there's an item that's key on tonight's agenda about city-issued cell phones, and this is really just an opportunity to change our philosophy on how we deal with issuing equipment, to move from allowances to actual equipment in a more cost-effective manner. So from our perspective, this is kind of a win-win. Better service, more technological capability, less cost. What else could you ask? I don't know. We'll find out when you guys get back. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. And Carrie, please.
Thank you, Marcel. We're still trying to work out this report, but it was very good, and I like the fact that you have kind of talked generally about the agenda today. I think that helps people decide whether or not they want to stick around and listen. Next is one of the favorite things that any city councilor or mayor could do is the recognition of the bookmark contest winners by the Library Foundation. Calvin Lowe, you will be presenting.
Mayor, City Council members. My name is Calvin Lowe. I'm a member of Library Foundation, and I'm here. It's my honor and pleasure here today to announce the winners of our bookmark contest this year. And let me give you a little background of the bookmark contest. This is the 11th year of the bookmark design contest presented by our public library foundation, and 6 winners from 3 categories. There are 3 categories: ages 8 and under, and ages 9 to 13, and ages 14 to 18. And 15,000 limited edition bookmarks will be printed and distributed throughout the entire year in the library. And each winner will receive a $100 gift certificate, and also being recognized by our city council member and receive award certificate from our mayor, of course. And they're judged by 5 guest judges from library, 1 member from library trustee, library foundation member, librarian, a local artist, and also a student. And this year, the competition is quite fierce. There were over 100 entries, and the 6 talented little artists were chosen from those 100 winners. And also, I would like to thank. We partner up with some local business, and if it weren't for the sponsors, this bookmark wouldn't be possible. And this year we have the Chen Group, which is Linda Chen, Ren Chen, and also Anne Clark. And we have Chinese School and Chinese Club of San Marino. And we also have Sky Vision Insurance. These are the sponsors for bookmark this year. And so now I would like to announce the winners. The first group, I would like to, of course,
Do you want me to come down there and?
please.
I'm still a little upset that mine wasn't selected, but I'll really get that anyway. I went for the youngest group, but
Yeah, what age
Still not
category
good enough.
they are told?
Maybe wrong.
maybe wrong group. Yeah.
So age 8 and under, we have Madeline Chen and Kimberly Pang. Please come.
Madeline, and wait a second.
Why don't you take, let the mayor take a picture?
Oh, one you get, which one's yours, Madeline? Okay, bring that out. That's actually excellent. I have it dressed just like that.
Hey, you're scaring the children. Straight, black.
Congratulations, and an excellent job. And how are you going to spend the $100? Don't save it, that's
Wow.
good. And Kimberly Pan. Kimberly, oh, carrot, excellent. Why don't we get a little picture here? Excellent. Congratulations. What are you going to do with Tommy Glass?
I don't know.
Yeah. You know, my birthday was last month. Okay.
So we have the
Declare that, that's fine.
next
You
group.
have to declare that.
We have the next age group, 9 to 13. The winner, we have Kaylin Chong
Caitlin.
and Irene Su.
Congratulations, Irene.
It's Caitlin.
No, Irene's okay.
That's okay.
See what we can do. Why don't you stand over here just for a second? And, oh, wow. Excellent job. Okay, I have to ask, what are you going to do with your $100? Oh, that is so nice. I would have bought candy with it, but, okay, Caitlin. Look at that, Caitlin. Let me take a look here. Oh, excellent. I like it. It's kind of a flipper thing going there, isn't it? How about you? What are you going to do with your 100? Save it. Boy, you guys are so responsible. Thank you. Congratulations.
And for age 14 to 18.
14 to 18.
Winners are Ken Chin and Ashley Tanaka.
Congratulations. Now, I have a question. Who is that on, is that someone special to 21? I don't know.
Yeah, Deion Sanders.
Could someone else give it? Deion Sanders. Congratulations, what are you going to do about it?
I can take it for some work in basketball game. Or I'll make up your gifts.
Oh, well, that's fine. It's 1451. Well, congratulations. And Ashley. And let's see, what do we have there? Oh, wow, look at those colors. And who does that depend?
Well, I actually didn't have anything in mind. I kind of had a vision that maybe she would control like some personality.
Oh, well, Ashley's beautiful. Congratulations. And what are you going to do in honor?
More art supplies.
More art supplies, there you go. We're back to work. Yeah. Congratulations, everybody. Is
And
there-
this will be printed in the back of the bookmark. And I believe John from Chinese Club.
Oh, John,
is here
yeah.
today. Thank you again.
Thank you again.
So,
And is anybody from the Chang group here?
No.
Oh, no? Everyone's celebrating the Valentine's Day. Okay, thank you very much, Calvin. Let's give Calvin a big hand. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the appointment of a new planning commission member. Who's giving the report?
I'm giving a report.
Gretchen.
Thank you, Mayor Tull.
Let's hold on a
Yeah.
minute so that they could go and we don't. Thank you again, everybody.
And congratulations, nice work.
It's our new camera.
Do you have your phone? You got it?
Okay. Council member Shepherd-Rami.
Thank you. I wanted to update the public and our council members and staff that we are thrilled. We had a process, Veronica, he was kind enough, as well as we asked our building planning director, Alder Cervantes, to help with the interview process and answer questions. After very impressive candidates and spending time getting to know each one of them, we decided to invite Jerry Wright, who's with us here tonight, to take the position and join the Planning Commission as its newest member. She has extensive experience in the field with her work for the City of Los Angeles and other places, and she's been a community leader and a community member for a few decades, we won't say how long. And I've had the pleasure to get to know her through other organizations as well, and I know that she will be a wonderful addition to the Planning Commission, and with her experience in city planning with the City of Los Angeles, we will also have somebody with great credentials to add to our board. So, no worries. And I would like to make a motion to appoint Jerry Wright to serve on the Planning Commission to fill the remainder of the current term vacancy, which would end June 30 in 2020.
Is there a second?
I'd love to second that.
There has been a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Congratulations, Jerry. Thank you for the commitment you're going to put in, your dedication to service for this community. I, knowing you personally, know that you will do a fantastic job. Congratulations. Would you like to say anything?
Don't ever ask me.
No.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, council members. I would like to thank council members Jeff Kowski, Jeremy, and Director of Planning Cervantes for interviewing me and recommending me. And I do feel very honored to serve the city. It has meant a lot to me and my family. Gretchen had asked me to tell her some things when I wasn't paying attention to my phone. So I will just say quickly that I did grow up here in San Marino, and I did attend all the schools. Lived here with my husband Tim since 1983. Our 3 children grew up here and have attended all the schools here as well. worked for the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office for 27 years. 25 of those years were in land use, and 9 of those years were as head of that department. So I do think I've probably seen it all where land use is involved. And I really do look forward to working with your staff and the other commission members, and I hope to contribute to our wonderful city.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wright.
Look forward to it.
Congratulations, and thank you.
Next up is the consent calendar. Do we have any requests from the members of our city council to withdraw any item from the consent calendar?
I'd like to pull item 8, please.
Item 8. Anyone else? Do we?
Can I make a comment about what?
Why don't we? I asked
Okay.
the public, and then before we go, was there any requests from the public to pull any item? Hearing none. Before there is a motion, do you have something to say about it?
I do. I wanted to comment on number 5, which was the acceptance and authorization to file the notice of completion for the street rehabilitation project, and congratulate Michael Throne, our Director of Parks and Public Works, for not only coming in under budget, but coming in under the original budget by managing the project so well. So I really appreciate that, and I wanted to single you out for excellent work. Well done. Thank you so much.
Not only do we want to thank you, but we want to ask if that vendor does anything else, like T-shirts. Do they do janitorial work?
Let's do our sidewalks. Let's get down to it.
Thank you.
Okay, that's
Thank you,
all.
Michael, and thank you, Council Member Gretchen Check-Wrong. I'm going to get this right eventually.
You
I know
are.
I will.
I'm so
Is there a motion with respect to items 4, 5, 6, 7,
That's it.
4, 5, 6, and 7?
So moved.
There being a motion, is there a second?
Second.
There's a second. Do I need roll call on this? Yes, I do.
Councilmember Jacobowski,
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami,
Yes.
Councilmember Udi,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huang,
Yes.
Mayor Top.
Yes. Item 8 has been pulled. Is there a specific question that Councilmember Jacobowski has of staff?
I just wanted to confirm that since we weren't all aware of this, I had asked about air conditioning. We had been informed that 5 of the classrooms do have central air, 8 have either windows or portable air conditioning, and 1 doesn't have any air conditioning. So we have confirmed that the classes that will be there will be fine with the air. One other question I had, and this is just in passing, and it isn't about the Chinese school per se. I know it will be picked up in further meetings of the Recreation Department. I just wanted to draw attention to one sentence. In the interest of renting space at Stoneman is so minimal that the reduced rate is like to result in more rental income than if only regular rate rentals were being permitted during the same period. I would just like to make the comment that we would strongly like to encourage the Recreation Department to please stay on top of that issue as we move forward and see if we might be able to get some more of those rentals filled as we go into the summer months. That would be a real feather in the department's cap. Thank you.
Councilmember Udi, do you have any comment on this?
I do, and it's not about the numbers, it's about the process, because I asked the city manager how come this got to our level. And it was because there was no stopgap between the decisions coming off the price list at the rec department. So I would like to invite the city manager and staff to come up with a recommendation on what you think future pricing should be, because this seems to me to be not a good use of our time for this to come to our level, and it could be solved more efficiently at the city manager's level.
Are you looking for us to come back, Councilmember Udi, with specific pricing levels, or are you looking for us to come back with a threshold at which point it would come to you versus when it's...
I think a threshold.
Okay, you can do that. Thank you.
There is, when you do that, you might want to check the statute to make sure that we're not, the municipal code has some limitations, so be very wary of those when we come back with the recommendations. Councilmember Shibonami, do you have any comments on this item?
No, I thought that I appreciate that we have an existing relationship with the Chinese school, and it's a very important part of our community, so I'm glad that it will remain this summer at the rec department at the Stoneman site. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, I know that the Chinese school, the summer program is actually, it's kind of more like for daycare. Because, you know, I know a lot of these students, they go to summer camps, they go to our summer school, and then in between, then when they're then they're enrolled in the Chinese school summer program. So I think we should support them on this because this provides the daycare to the parents, that they know that the working parents.
Thank you. Any member of the public have a comment on item number 8? Yes.
Mayor Talt, members of the City Council. My name is John Chow, and I am a Board of Director member of the Chinese Club of San Marino, and I am also, just for full disclosure, member of the Ad Hoc Long-Term Financial Planning Commission, and Stoneman has come up in our discussions at some of the meetings. As far as the Chinese school is concerned, it is part of the Chinese Club of San Marino, and the Chinese Club is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And so the board is made up of 13 board members, 7 of which are appointed to a school committee that oversees the Chinese school, which operates the Saturday program and the after-school program at Carver and Valentine, in addition to the summer program over at Stoneman. The board of directors, including the school committee members, are all volunteers and non-paid. And so I appreciate it, and I thank the City Council for considering maintaining the flat rate, which is what we've been paying in the past years. And as Vice Mayor Juan mentioned, this is something that we do for the community. And so whatever we can do to hold down those costs certainly will be beneficial, and I'm sure the families who send their kids to the Chinese schools summer program would also appreciate very much.
May I ask you a question? Approximately how many students do you anticipate enrolling, or what was perhaps the enrollment last year?
So it's split into morning classes and afternoon classes. We have about 88 during the morning and 55 in the afternoon. Obviously in the afternoon, a lot of times the kids go to other programs, sports programs and whatnot. So it is a little bit lower. At the Chinese schools summer program goes for 8 weeks, whereas the San Marino schools summer program only goes for 6 weeks. And so we do have students that transfer over for those 2 weeks because of working parents. The Chinese club rents 3 classrooms at Stoneman on a full-time basis, so it goes from 9 o'clock until 5 o'clock. And then there are 2 other classrooms that are only rented for half a day.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you, John. And just for the public's education, this matter was brought to our attention as a result of some very hard work and study by our rec department as well as our city manager in discovering that although we have done this in the past as a matter of course, it is something that we needed to clean up and make sure that it came to the council under our present guidelines. And so it wasn't something it was allowed before, but we needed to dot an I and cross a T, and that's why we have it. But thank you, John. And do I have a motion regarding item number 8?
So moved.
There's a motion to authorize a reduced rental fee of $7,555 to the Chinese School of San Marino for the rental of Stoneman school classrooms for their 2018 summer school program has been made and seconded. Is there a roll call, please?
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Romney?
Yes.
Councilmember Eby?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wong?
Yes.
Mayor Tong?
Yes, the matter passes. Our city treasurer is not here today. She is ill. Is someone else going to make a report, or are we just going to accept and file?
That's at your pleasure, Mayor.
Why don't we just accept and file?
Very good.
Unless any member of the city council had a question.
No, thank you.
Even better. So we will file that. Next up is item number 11, request for designation of local historic landmark, 1155 Oak Grove Avenue, Thorntons, who I see have delayed their Valentine celebration to come here on this matter. Aldo, will you be making the report?
I will.
Thank you.
Let me first pass around a book that was given to me by Charles. These are the properties that are currently owned by the National Trust. I tabbed his specific property if you want to take a look at that. The applicant, Mr. Thornton, has requested the council consider his property as a local historic landmark pursuant to City Code Section 02-1202. As stated in this code, the City Council may approve or deny a petition to designate a building, landmark, or other property as a local historic landmark based on findings that the property played a role during the formation and existence of this city. As a matter of background, in 2010, a similar petition was heard and subsequently granted by the State Historic Resources Commission to deem the property a historic resource and enroll the property in the California Register of Historic Resources as well as the National Register of Historic Places. At a public hearing around the same time in 2010, the City Council reviewed this petition and endorsed the nomination. There is a tremendous amount of evidence that would justify the decision to make this property a local designated landmark. In 1928, Catherine Sinclair Emery commissioned Myron Hunt to design a Tudor revival home on this property. Myron Hunt has had a great deal of influence in the city of San Marino, and you see a lot of his work in the city. Specifically, he's designed approximately 8 homes just in this city alone, but he's got a regional outreach. One example of a home that he designed in the city is 999 Roslyn Road, which is classified as a neoclassical, a true neoclassical architectural home. Myron Hunt is also responsible for designing Henry Huntington Estate, which is now known as the Huntington Library. As an attachment, staff has provided the council and the public the National Register of Historic Places form for this specific property. And this form is intended to educate the public as to the level of detail related to this property in terms of historic significance. A decision to deem this property a local landmark will not have any bearings to the use or zoning of the property. The property will remain an R1 single-family zone and property. The mere fact that the property is already recognized as a historic resource means that any future use on this site is subject to the California Environmental Quality Act, which is CEQA. And of course, the intention of CEQA is to maintain the historic significance of the property as well as all of the character-defining features of this property as well. So in light of the evidence presented via this report, staff recommends the City Council adopt the resolution 18-01 designating the Thornton Gardens as a local historic landmark. That concludes the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Cervantes. Council Member Jacobowski, do you have any questions regarding the staff?
I do. So currently, the National Trust owns and maintains the property, correct?
As of the 9th of January, yes.
Okay. When we looked through the National Register photographs, the interior is also very beautiful. I know we're mostly concerned with the structure itself. Is there any future control over the interior of the home after the Thorntons are no longer at the property, or is that subject to the way the National Trust wishes to handle that?
It is subject to the ownership of the property, whether it's Thornton or the National Trust. But looking at the background in respect to the Charles Thornton, as well as the National Trust, and looking at this document, I can assure you that either ownership is going to maintain the interior of the property. With respect to the exterior of the property, there is an easement on the property held by the LA Conservancy to make sure that any modifications to the exterior coincide with not only a master plan, but also the character-defining features of what you currently see. The finishes on the exterior, the use of the windows, and some of the treatments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Udi, do you have any questions regarding staff? Councilmember Shepherd-Romney.
No questions, just congratulations, I'm thrilled.
Vice Mayor, I do not either, although it upsets me that this home is going off the market, because if I win the lotto, this is where I was going at.
Maybe the National Trust will let you move in one day.
Does the applicant like to make a statement?
They're all welcome to come to lunch one day.
Thank you.
And I'd also like to compliment you on the exquisite parkway surrounding the property. It is just beautifully landscaped and maintained, and it's a joy to walk in the morning. So I give you special thanks for that.
Does any member of the public have any comment? Seeing none, I will gladly accept a motion. Councilmember Shepherd Rami requests to make the motion.
I wanted to congratulate, well, this is part of what I said before. I did have the pleasure with the San Marino Garden Club to visit your gardens before in the interior hall, and it's truly a masterpiece. So that was several years ago, so I'm thankful to you and your efforts to get it nationally recognized and state recognized, to preserve that, because it really is a great gift to the community. And I would be honored to nominate it for a local designation. I would move to approve the proposed resolution designating the Thornton Estate property as a local historic landmark.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor. Let's go ahead and do a roll call on this.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Yes?
Councilmember Shepherd Rami.
Yes.
Councilmember Udi.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wong.
Yes.
Mayor Top.
Yes. The motion passes and the resolution is adopted. Thank you very much, Thorntons. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Let's move on to item number 12, the fiscal year, mid-year financial review and financial planning recommendations. Interim Administrative Service Director Josh Betta will make the report.
Thank you, Mayor. Full disclosure, I took an awful lot of your time last month and I won't be doing that again. Very few slides, because the bulk of what we're presenting to you tonight are matters that are brought to you for your consideration for vote. You'll recognize this first slide was presented last month. The three most important points in the fiscal year. We report every month here, we're proud of that, but there are three places that really need our attention, and then it's the audit, it's the mid-year review, and the annual budget. And this is the mid-year review in February. We're on the schedule we want to be. One of the things that's very unique about San Marino is the establishment of the Financial Planning Committee just recently. It was established some time ago, but it's just started to function recently. And ideally, you'd want that to inform this evening. But the process being what it is, it's more likely to, it will inform the annual budget as it's assembled and presented in preliminary fashion to you under normal circumstances in May, for hopefully your adoption in June. The other thing the community is doing that's exceptional is the work that's just commenced on the strategic plan. And you'd want that to inform the annual budget as well. There's a timeline problem here. There's something very exceptional going on in the community that is truly to the benefit of the history of the community, real decisions about where we're going both financially and strategically. 6 of the decisions being presented to you for consideration tonight, of the total 16, have to do with this one idea, which is a resolution where we would go on record next month, go on record with your attention tonight, to adopt the budget 2 months later. Fiscal year still stays intact, doing exactly what it does. It commences on July 1st. The resolution would say that we will operate only normally until we adopt the budget. There would be nothing exceptional done in the community with regard to capital projects or capital expenditures of an exceptional nature. Very important thing, we do recommend this wholeheartedly to you so that we can, all of us together, create a great budget document, create a real community understanding for all the things that we're engaged in today. Mid-year review, as I mentioned, is 16 decisions we brought to you. It follows approximately 5-6 months of the community really, maybe for the first time in a year and a half, having financial information in front of them. This is a time when we're asking you to tell us what to do. With these decisions, we're asking you to hold us accountable for what you tell us to do. I believe what you've assembled, Mr. Mayor, is a team of horses under harness that are ready to go. And we look for the City Council to give us some instructions that are really important for us in the work that we've already started, in the work that we need to continue the next several months, and the work that will come together with the strategic decisions that are being made in the next several weeks. The idea that we have, and in many of my comments about the strength of the city financially, it's about preserving and protecting what you have. We have a fiscal strength here that is exceptional when pointed, in my estimation, toward the solving of the challenges that you put before yourselves. Long-term financial strategy, long-term strategic plan. There is investment in here in solving a post-employment problem that is extremely problem of extreme dimension in many other communities and small dimension here. There's an investment in instructing us to come back to you with policy research on matters that have perhaps long been troubling or unsolved in the community. There is some investment on giving us some instructions to continue our work in foundational book-level accounting. There's some caution in a few of the recommendations. Caution that we should probably would be best served by tapping the brakes on what we charge people through our fee schedule. We have a little bit of an arguable, I wouldn't say disagreement, but there's a lapse in the last time that the city has done a cost study on what it charges others 5 years ago. It's our recommendation it would be wise to just wait a year and not change our fees, and what that means is not to increase them this year. What my presentation won't really entail is a great deal of detail on the first attachment to the report, and that is a summary of where we see this particular fiscal year going. And that's because we see it going according to the way you budgeted it. There's one exceptional item in the Public Safety Fund where there's been a great deal of overestimation on what we would collect from the Tri-Cities Fire Agreement. Shortly after the budget was adopted, it became a two-city fire agreement, and later it became a situation where the city of South Pasadena actually hired the division chief. So we won't be receiving revenue from that, about $500,000. Because there was an expectation that San Marino would hire that division chief and we would charge the other two cities. Mitigating and offsetting that is the increase in property taxes this year over the prior year. It looks to be at least 6.5%. There is the other exceptional thing. There is conversation about pension, of course, in the mid-year report, but that's a matter that's been delegated for solution or recommendation to the Strategic Financial Planning Committee. There's no recommendation that we have. Our profile, some of my observations, the city of San Marino did not participate in what every other city in California basically did after Prop 13, was chase down retail sales, chase down other ways of financing itself. And it speaks a lot to the character of the community today. We are different. The financial resources that we bring to bear on problems are different. And it's about that word risk. Because what we're finding out today is that the cities that went headlong into risk-taking strategies for redevelopment sales tax are paying for it today with pension and post-employment problems. The city hasn't, we've acknowledged this, it's appropriate to do it again. We have not managed with accuracy technically. I don't believe the staff has communicated consistently financial position to prior city councils. We have the fiscal power to sustain our financial health, to preserve that, to confront the questions that are so confounding to other communities, that have in Sacramento a belief that 1/4 of the cities in California will look at bankruptcy within the next 3 years. Excuse me. We have the fiscal power to redefine our services, and that's certainly something that your staff here is loud and clear about the desire to examine what we do and how we do it. And that power can be wielded in anticipation of what many of us believe will be the discontinuation of the parcel tax in 2020. Real briefly, 3 other local government agencies, just by comparison. I find a lot of people in the community really benefit from these things. I hope the council does. Mayor Tornek in Pasadena has floated a trial balloon and said he'd like to support a 3/4 cent sales tax in Pasadena. There's a lot of reasons why you do this. You'd have to be a City Hall insider to really determine what the ultimate objective is. But this is very bold, and I can't see Mayor Tall bringing something like this to the Rotary Club soon.
I don't think that's going to happen.
City of Monrovia, they were the poster child, one of them in California, for their aggressiveness with redevelopment and sales tax development agreements. And believe me, they told everybody about it. They rode high on the hog, and they danced with an awful lot of risk that has got them to the point of being cash poor. Very much so. They've inherited all kinds of, on the third point there, all kinds of problems in the public sector, and have recently, in November, exchanged, in the words of in one article, one credit card for another. They've paid off their entire unfunded pension liability as it was with the pension borrowing, with the hopes that the market works better for them that way. It's an extreme example of risk, in my opinion, and Monrovia is in real trouble over there.
How much did it cost?
I believe they exhausted $112 million of unfunded liability. That is with the assumption that their unfunded liability does not grow from this point forward. Very risky. They could end up paying both sides of that equation. Everybody's favorite punching bag, the state of California. There's so much that is written about this every year. I just thought I'd give you a quick look at how it does work. The magenta and the fuchsia is personal income tax, 70% of their income. The fuchsia is 19% from sales tax. Any correction, any change in the California economy hits them with 90% of their revenue sources. And it hits them very quickly and very severely, as we've all read in prior years. They tend to do extremely well in good times, with the personal income tax leading the way. If that isn't good enough, on the expenditure side in the magenta there, due to California initiatives, most specifically education, the first 41 cents of every dollar has to be spent on K through 12 education. So they don't get a lot of choices in Sacramento, and that's why you read about them so often. Into the body of our recommendations. We've tried to group these for you in a functional way, Mr. Mayor, so that it might aid and assist in your consideration voting on all of these at one time, to be honest with you, on each slide. There are 4 in this particular one that you ask the city manager to return to you with the recommended staffing plan for the financial operations of the community. Right now, we're functioning with interims in 2 of 2.5 key positions. Ms. Marlowe mentioned that just earlier. A report on the early redemption of our only piece of debt in the community, and that's pension obligation bonds. They are due to terminate with normal debt service payment in 2024, 6 years left. This is just the idea, following up on something that Councilmember Udi had said. Why don't we just take a look? Let's get a report on this. It may not be feasible, it may not be the wise economic decision, but let's find out. Talked last month at length about the problems the city's had with the Capital Equipment Proprietary Fund. It was established in 2015. Wasn't done right. And there's never been a policy on record about how we function that fund. We want you to tell us to return to you by the end of May with a policy for doing that. we want you to tell us, and I made reference to this, this is one of what will be 6 recommendations concerning a resolution of continuing operational appropriations. Again, that is saying that we have every intention, deliberate intention, of adopting our budget in August so as to catch up with some very vital community planning.
Josh, can I hold you there? What I would like to do is use your framework now and have the council ask you questions about these 4 items before we move on to the next.
Absolutely, I was going to hold you there.
No, I'm the mayor. I hold you there.
He holds you.
Yeah. And then also open it up for public a discussion on each of these, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Because of these matters, in my view, but I'm only 1 of 5. The first 3 are really no-brainers because we're really just asking for reports on financial information. It's the 4th one that probably would open up a greater discussion. So, does anybody have, pardon me, on the first 4 elements there, Councilmember Jakubowski, do you have any questions?
No question, I'll save comment for later discussion.
Okay, after we, Councilmember Udi?
Can I have a couple comments on Josh's comments? Or do I need to hold?
If you want to do it on these 4, or do you have something general? No, please go ahead.
I've been thinking about facts versus opinions, and I think it's a fact that San Marino's got, what, $23 million in the bank, and it's a fact that that's very admirable compared to other cities. But I think it's an opinion that it's, have the fiscal power to withstand future uncertainty, because we don't know what that is yet. And I think we'll get a better feeling when we finish some of the long-term strategic planning. So I want to caution people with facts versus opinions as we're considering these things. On these first 2 items, I would love to see a due date so that we have a recommended staffing plan for the city's finance operations by. And I think that also ties into item 13 that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. So I think those 2 things could be tied, so I would sure appreciate what staff's recommendations are for due dates on the first 2 bullets that are just hanging there. Because we have due dates on the others. I think one of the purposes of this exercise is to surface all the little creatures under the rocks and get some priorities behind them and be accountable for it.
So is it your recommendation that we hold off at least with respect to the first bullet point and discuss it as part of item number 13? Because we can make the recommendation at that time as part of whatever motion.
Whatever, probably makes sense there.
Yeah, I agree. So whomever makes the motion on the first one, we're going to withdraw the first bullet point and add it to our discussion under item 13, which is the amendment of professional services agreement account services. We will get back to see, do you want to put a due date on the on when you get the report on the permanent obligation bonds?
At your council meeting of April.
So that's April, the regular Wednesday night?
Yes, sir.
Could I get a date there so you make
Since
11th?
we're getting into the discussion of that item, may I go back and make a comment then?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to weigh in with the city's pension obligation bonds. I sure would like to hear a weigh-in from the Strategic Financial Planning Committee on that item, rather than directly assign it. I don't want to diminish the work and the weight of the work of this group.
Is that something that they are considering?
There's certainly, I mean, as we're each meeting with the chair and he is showing us what he has on his spreadsheet thus far, it just might be helpful to get the weigh-in, but I will defer to Councilmember Udi on that.
I'm sure the committee could be part of the recommendation in April. So, Stephen, you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we
Cool,
need to
thank
be a
you.
part of that recommendation.
Thank you.
So the report will encompass also what the financial planning, strategic financial planning committee comes up. Okay, so that will remain. Any other questions, Councilmember Udi? Councilmember Shepherd-Romey.
I do have a question about that particular item, the pension obligation bonds. So just so the public is aware, these were before or have been on our books since 10 years, 2007, is that correct?
2007, that's correct.
But their termination date would be 2024. So
Right.
essentially, the concept would be to redeem them early to our benefit, to not pay interest, is that my understanding? And
Yeah.
that would be one of the moves, like the OPEB, which we discuss under a separate point as well, to pay those off earlier because we have the cash and these are more modest than our overall pension liability under CalPERS or PERPA. Is that correct?
It's, yeah, absolutely, and just to clarify on the PO basis, whether or not it's economically a good decision for you.
And those are at 4 or 5% interest, correct?
It's in that neighborhood, yes.
So the savings will be how much if we pay it off early?
That's what we're looking for. Is it a wise decision to do because we can realize savings?
Correct. Okay, thank you very much.
That's the point.
Oh, okay, I follow.
It's about 800,000 balance.
I follow. Do you have any other questions?
No, that was it.
Vice Mayor?
No.
The continuing operational appropriations, the continuing resolution. I just want to make clear that if we do go ahead and approve this, this is a one-time only, and I'm doing it on the trust of the staff, that this is not, we're not going to be the federal government, where every year or every 2 years, we're dealing with continuing operational appropriations. And I'm in support of it, given that I think we're moving in the right direction, and the time to do so will be better after we get all these reports in, have an opportunity to consider them, and still allow staff, which is relatively new, to assess them and provide their expertise in that area. So I'm in favor of it now, but I'm going to go on the record that I never want to see another one like that.
On behalf of your staff, I can commit to you that that is true. I have never been part of one of these in my career. They're extremely rare. The only times that budgets are usually approved 2 months late is by mistake because budgets drag out and they can't make decisions. That's not what we're doing here. This is a deliberate, intentional decision to incorporate some of the other good decisions that you've made, like the Strategic Financial Planning Committee, the strategic plan, and so forth. We want to get the biggest bang for the buck out of both of those two committees as possible and be thoughtful about how we incorporate those. So this is not an ongoing thing. This is a one-time.
So to reiterate, that August 31 is a drop dead date.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to move to, on these 4 items, 3 items. That's right, the recommended staff planning. On these 3 items, the last 3 bullet points, are there any comments from the...
With the inclusion of a due date for the second bullet point of April.
Right, April 11th.
2018. Or 11th April 2018, to be precise.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, you may. Please. Don't forget to smile.
Item 2, I was one of the biggest opponents to that issue, those bond issues. The CalPERS collaborated with the law firm of Sutcliffe et al., I don't remember the other names, up in Sacramento, to pass those without a vote of the people. And it appeared as a legal notice in the Tribune. The city went along and issued the bonds, went along with the issue of the bonds. And what happened was that was a conglomeration of bonding by 4 cities, of which we were one. And I have argued repeatedly to redeem those bonds for reducing the interest costs or paying them off. And of course, the other thing was that when CalPERS came to us, that was going to be our full obligation, and I said, hey, that's just a down payment, but that's one of the reasons they sold it to the city. It's going to pay our obligation. Now we can see we're up to 22 million or 92 million, depending on how you look at the return on investments with CalPERS. But the bottom line on this thing was that I have argued repeatedly over the years for redemption of those bonds, and Steve Dorsey researched it and said there was a clause in there that prohibited redemption of the bonds, basically because there were 3 other cities involved in the total amount of the bonds issued. The other thing about that whole thing was that after the fact, Howard Jarvis and the other people went to the California Appellate Court, and they declared the issue of those bonds unconstitutional because they were implemented without a vote of the people. So therefore, even though there was a provision in the original bond issue that they could come back to us repeatedly for more bonds and force them down our throat, the appellate court rejected that. So we're back to square one, and that is the question of whether what Dorsey found out is true, is that as to whether you can actually redeem them. I would, as a party of one, as a citizen, advocate that we do redeem them, but I don't know that you can, because Dorsey said he had researched it and found out you couldn't do it.
Thank you, Gene. That will be the, well, I'm sure the report will include that. Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak on these three items? I will close the public comment. Are there any other comments on these three items under the first recommended motions?
I just wanted to thank Mr. Robbins being our unofficial historian and making sure that we follow up on issues that we may not have known about otherwise. Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, do I have a motion on the three bullet points 2 through 4?
Sure. I move to direct the city manager to return the city council with a report on the early redemption of the city pension obligation bond due 11 April 2018, a policy for the functioning of the capital equipment proprietary fund by 31 May 2018, and a resolution of continuing operational appropriations effective through 31 August 2018.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Council Member Udi. We don't need a roll call, do we? All those in, we're not.
For this is
Yeah. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Those items pass. Let's move on to what we're going to move to direct the city manager to do. Josh.
It is recommended that the city manager do the following. The city's fee schedule, last time there was a cost of service study, it was 2013. California law essentially says you can't charge a fee unless it offsets your costs. You're recovering costs for them. This is a great deal of caution that our existing fee schedule could be challenged. It's a low probability of that, in all honesty. But it only takes one to get upset with a certain fee and challenge how it is. Show me and prove to me the calculations is the conversation. And we believe it good to just step back here, keep the same fee schedule in place that we have this year, next year. And look at this in the following year at some point when some of the dust clears. One of the first things the fire chief talked to me about upon my arrival was a nonsensical fee in his mind, and it was something that he didn't believe was the right thing to do in view of the fact that the community pays a parcel tax. We charge people $100 if we respond to them with the medical team, the paramedics, and don't transport them. The chief is wise, of course. Being an experienced man, there are times when they won't assess the fee, and there are many other times when insurers will not reimburse it because they look at us a little cross-eyed for charging a fee such as that. Low-hanging fruit, council, to eliminate or direct the city manager to cease assessment and collection of this fee right now. An item that gets an awful lot of, well, it doesn't get a lot of conversation, but it's something that your staff has looked at in the interest of efficiencies. There are things that we do for the school district. They may be the right things. They may be what this community wants to do for the school district. But they do cost the city at least $136,000 right now in our beginning calculation. We think it a good idea to complete a study. What do we do? How much does it cost? What do we provide? And I will tell you that in October, when we first touched on this topic, it really isn't a great idea among the current staff of exactly what it is we do. So there is a bit of a reality check here that this exercise involves. I want to be clear, your staff is not saying we should do something about this other than collect the information and give it
Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Petta? Councilmember Jacobowski.
Thank you. I want to get clarification from you. It says not substantively alter the fee schedule, and then when you were giving the narrative, you said keep it the same as last year. May I ask which it is, because I'll make an additional comment?
The distinction being this is as we get into matters, there may be a compelling reason to change something that we find later.
Having attended these budget meetings where the fee schedule has been presented over the last few years, I don't think there has been a year when we have substantively altered the fee schedule. I think there would be tolerance, and I'm deeply sensitive to cost recovery only. I think it would be okay in some cases to have minor adjustments, correct?
It depends.
Okay.
It does depend. I have never seen support calculations for how the city derived what it currently has on its fee schedule. Now, if somebody were to ask me why it is that we charge $900 for a plan review.
And I do remember that dialogue in the past, including we want to be conservative because we haven't done the study. So I think, you know, there has been a real conservative approach toward this. I just would think due to annual cost increase of doing business, small amounts could be tolerated. But I guess we can look further at that when you're ready to publish. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Udi, do you have any questions?
Two questions, and I want to play off what Susan just said. Do we want to say not change the fee schedule until it can be studied? And then in the future, I know there are a lot of other priorities right now, and this is not a big number, but if then, 7.5 months from now, we say it's time to study it, we can pull it off and do it. And I'll look to the lawyers for guidance there. And then, do you want a due date on the third bullet?
I had that marked down too. When do you think you'd get the total cost services study before? Finished, or
Let's bring it in April.
middle of April?
No, your council meeting.
Yeah. 11 April 2018.
Thank you.
Councilmember Udi, anything else?
Nope.
Before we move on, I just want to get clarity. So you're suggesting that that first bullet point be not substantively alter the city's fee schedule as presented in the proposed fiscal year 19 budget until and unless we conduct a fee study?
Councilmember Shepherd.
I had a question, the remaining, I guess, thing we've already discussed, the top and bottom of your recommendations. In the language that we have here and on our motion, it doesn't say to just residents. So I was confused, and maybe our fire chief can speak to, is this something that you only charge residents in its existing? I understand why we're dropping it, I'm just trying to understand who is the universe that's been assessed this.
Anytime the fire department goes out and assesses a patient, does a transport, we bill the patient. If they're a resident, it's $100. If they're non-resident, it's $300. What I've suggested that our finance director do is eliminate the resident.
Now I understand. Thank you very much for the clarification.
Will I be able to get my money back?
Too late.
Next time. So that should be the $100 no transfer service at scene residential fee.
So you could actually insert immediately cease assessment and collection of the San Marino resident $100.
Right.
That was my only concern, because the language wasn't in there, and I wanted to make sure. So if we do change any other fee, it was the San Marino resident fee that we are.
And we will still collect the $300 from non-residents.
And as to the first one, I'm sorry, one more question before we go.
Okay.
My question has to do with the first. It says the city's fee schedule, and we discussed about, we need to do an assessment of that. Does that involve rec department fees? Does that involve all fees from all departments, planning and building? I don't know what the fee schedule entails, and I was not in the packet. So I want to know how extensive and what are we limiting ourselves to? Because some of the departments are obviously different and under study.
The fee schedule is published in the budget as a component of, as Councilmember Jakubowski mentioned, as a component of considering your budget every year. It's 15 pages of fees, their description.
I think she was asking, are the recreation departments
Oh, yes.
program fees a part of that?
Yes, they are.
Then we probably
All
need to pull
departments.
that out, unless we will consider it to be studied.
Well, I agree that that might be a concern, but I believe that the fee is based upon it per class. And it doesn't actually list what the dollar is, the dollar amount. Is that?
Correct.
Rosa, why don't you speak as to that issue, if you would, please?
Some of the rec fees are to be determined by the director or the manager, and that's the class fees because those vary depending on the classes. But the rental fees are set fees, so it depends on the fees.
Okay, so, but this would apply to all.
But we could pull it if in the very near future, after assessing the rec department, we make a determination that we need to amend our fee schedule, we could do it at that point. What we're just saying is we're not gonna do anything right now, but it still gives us the opportunity after the recreation department assessment. It says, okay, we're charging too low. Let's raise the prices. Is that right? Am I wrong there?
You're right, the city can wait and address it at a later time, and all that's being proposed, as I understand it, is we're just leaving everything alone as is with the current fee schedule. The point I was asking to clarify is there's a difference between fees for, recreational services or things like that, where somebody's actually, purchasing a service versus fees charged for people for engaging in governmental, processes like submitting a development application. When you're charging those sorts of fees, that's where the state law comes in and says we have to limit the fees to cost recovery. Versus when we're offering, what is essentially an enterprise service in the form of a recreational program, this sort of thing. You can charge what.
And I would suggest with this, other than the recreation department, not alter the city's fee schedule.
Well, let's hold on just a second. Okay, I'm gonna wait. Go ahead.
So, Councilman Udi, are you saying then that there be an analysis done to justify recreation department increases that would be on the fee schedule?
I want total flexibility because the Recreation Department Commission is now going through a re-envisioning of what that should look like.
Right.
And I don't think they should have handcuffs on them during the process. And I'm afraid if the first bullet includes the Recreation Department, that will be handcuffs.
But I think that what our city attorney is telling us is that as an enterprise-related fee is not something that goes through an assessment that ultimately would come about allowing us to charge fees.
It's not subject to the same legal requirement regarding fitting between cost recovery and what the size of the fee is.
And what would you call that fee?
And then clearly there's no cost recovery on a lot of those.
This is intended to include only those items where we're trying to do cost recovery. Those are the fees that we're targeting here. We're not talking about the recreation programming. That's a separate item. I might suggest that instead of carving out recreation, we actually just need to change this to something like not substantively offer the city's cost recovery fee schedule and limit it to those kinds of things, because that's what this is aimed at.
I don't recall seeing the, fee schedule of recreation department and the fee schedule.
Yeah.
It's.
There are some
I think we just need to, include saying that, which fee schedule that is.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, I think also trying to carve out just recreation fees runs into this problem because the recreation department may charge fees that are cost recovery fees. For some of their fees are going to be cost recovery fees subject to the same rules as a development application fee.
Right.
But some of the other fees for like the recreation program aren't necessarily going to be subject to the same restrictions. So carving out it by department becomes problematic in that regard. And if I might just take a moment to address the suggestion that you'd be handcuffing yourself. I don't see this motion doing that. This is something, it's just a direction to staff that you're not directing, you're directing staff to not adjust the fee schedule in any way until there's been further study. You can always change that direction, so it's not a handcuff, it's just a direction for the time being until you say otherwise.
Councilman Member Udi, does that answer your question?
I'm not totally comfortable with it. But I still think in a re-envisioning of the rec department and services and its positions, given that, you know, we subsidized them, what was it, $586,000 per the audit last year, that the commission should be free to brainstorm, to be as creative as they can on how to come back with the recommendations. And I don't want bullet number 1 to feel them constrained.
Well, then let's have it not substantially alter the city fee schedule as presented in the proposed fiscal year 19 budget until further study.
So there are two different ways to think about cost recovery. One of the ways that our city attorney is talking about are the cost recovery items that are mandated by state law to have backup and assessment study and so forth. Then there's cost recovery the way we're using it here in the city, which is that we want the recreation department, for example, to do a certain amount of cost recovery, but those are two separate kinds of cost recovery.
Fee for use.
So it's a fee for use, but the expectation of cost recovery is, that's what we've done here in the city. So this is intended to target those fees that are cost recovery per state law, not cost recovery that you've asked for. So if we add a word in here that says something like, you know, California's, the Calico, Stephen's going to address it. The California state governed just cost recovery, then that wouldn't include any of the things that you're talking about, and that wasn't the intention.
I understand.
So he'll work hard and come up with good language for you by the time you're ready for the motion.
Councilmember Udi, do you have any other questions?
No, sir, thank you.
Councilmember Shepherd Romney?
No, I just wonder if we can just push this to a later date, and so we can get clarification as to what fees fall into what categories for what department, because it seems to affect potentially more than just the rec department as well.
Okay, at the time of the motion, then...
I'm saying, so.
No, then
that's
time...
my concern, because there seems to be different interpretations depending on how you're using the legalese or a state concept of cost recovery versus what we're internally working with the different departments.
Well,
so that's my concern. If we put in language, and I don't want to make the city attorney draft something here tonight, I would just like to see this be continued till we have greater clarification as to the categories that we are speaking, that you have delineated for us that have to do with the cost recovery, and we have to do research or a study, which I think was the focus of this language, but we have this provision. But I don't know that we're ready to do that tonight.
Thank you. In the way that could be handled is at the time of the motion, nobody move on that first bullet point. Or if somebody does, then it goes down in flames. So it's one or the other.
Okay.
Vice Mayor?
I agree with Councilmember Udi. Perhaps we can make a motion, not altering the city's fees schedule, excluding the fee schedule of the recreation department at this time.
I would agree with that, as well as agree to the recommended changes in the language relating to bullet point 2 regarding residents. Is there any comments from the public regarding these 3 items? Seeing none, do I have a motion? Oh, Gene, I'm sorry. I was going to try to beat you there.
He was slow to lift his hand.
You got to move fast with me.
Yeah, I know I do. Concerning item number 2, I think the $100 is a pittance. My major obligation to that thing has been what happens after the service is provided in the ambulance service, because this costs people tens of thousands of dollars. And I gave you folks an article once, not long ago, on that in the newspaper as to how much people were being charged. Basically, we have based our fees on the county charge. I think they're the ones that set the charges. But in any case, I think we ought to look at that again, because like in my own case, I drive to the hospital before I'd call the fire department. I was dying and I couldn't operate.
They might slow walk you. So
I'll
that's a
take
good
you,
idea.
Gene. You're a neighbor of mine. You live right around the corner. I'll give you a ride.
That's right. Concerning item number 3, You know, the school board, even though they're our friends and neighbors, have always taken their pound of flesh for anything the city wanted to do in conjunction with them. That's the reason, basically, we bought the Women's Club and we bought the Stoneman School, because they had we had the City Hall, the library, and Lacey Park, and they had all the other facilities, and anytime we wanted to conduct something, whether it's a swimming pool or whether it was a meeting, they got their pound of flesh for using their facilities. So, and I just happened to get the budget today from the city school district because I'm studying it relating to this bond issue, and it's a stack about that big, but their budget is about $50 million a year compared to what ours is. There's a lot of money involved in that thing, and so I think that we ought to approach relationships with the school district accordingly. Particularly, I'm concerned about if they get all these bond issues, what it's going to do to the credit of the entire city, not just their part of the city. And it's something we need to coordinate here at the council and with the school district to see what those bonds and what they're planning on doing is going to cause us as a city in terms of total cost and the establishment of credit in the future for our own situation that we had to put bonds out and what have you. Anyway, those are my two comments on those items. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruck. Anybody further? Any further close to public comments? City Manager Marlowe is raising her hand.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, the choice is yours about whether you want to move on bullet point 1 or not, but if you did, the city attorney has already crafted the statement, and the first bullet point, if you wanted to go with it, would look something like this: do not substantively alter any fee in the city's fee schedule that is limited by state law to cost recovery until and unless the city conducts the fee allocations.
Thank you, and thank you, City Attorney Flower. Any further discussion on these points? Do I have a motion on the 3 bullet points under section 2 of Mr. Bettis' recommended motions?
Sure. Being the one here. Okay, so I'm sorry, I did not write down what the.
That's what she said.
Okay, I've moved to direct the city manager to not substantially alter any fee in the city's fee schedule that is limited by state law to cost recovery until and unless the city conducts a fee allocation study, to immediately cease the assessment and collection of the $100.
San Marino resident.
I know, I was going to put it at the end.
Yeah.
Where do you want to put it?
I was just going to put it before the $100 rate, wherever you want.
Okay. Of the $100 no transport service to San Marino residents for service at scene to San Marino residents, sorry, that was messy. Component of the city fee for service, 110 emergency medical transport. I am reading this, believe it or not. And to publish a study of the total cost and services and contracts provided by the city to San Marino Unified School District by April 2018.
Just point of clarification, do you mean substantively or substantially in that first one? I heard substantially.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's also a writing issue. My bad.
So that's amended.
To substantively.
As opposed to substantially. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and have a roll call on this.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami.
Yes.
Councilmember Yedi.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wong.
Yes.
Mayor Top.
Yes.
Next issue, Mayor, is a community conversation that we've heard as your staff, and I know you've heard several different times. It has to do with an application tax on the Huntington Library and Gardens. It's our recommendation that you direct the city attorney to publish a research memorandum on this topic, something that would be consistent with his legal abilities in terms of non-confidential material. We're aware that In the past, there have been confidential memos prepared on this topic. Our concern as a united community here is to put light on this topic, get a lasso around this thing, and make a decision, give you some ability to maneuver on this and make a decision.
And just for the record, there have been repeated memorandums written by this and directed to the city council under the attorney-client and privilege. And I think you're asking them merely to publish these. That concerns me because I certainly never want to waive the attorney-client privilege. And if they are so published,
just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, we're not requesting publication of any of the prior memos which were produced under the assumption that they would be maintained under the attorney-client privilege. This would be the production of a new document, whatever form that might take. It would be publicly available and intended to be public.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Perhaps it could be rephrased as providing a public report rather than public.
Well, why don't we deal with that in a second? We'll get to public comment in a moment. Mr. Ruck, I know that you have been pushing this issue for the last 35 years. Council Member Jacoboski, do you have any questions?
I would like clarification. Attorney Flower just mentioned one term, what is before us is research memorandum. I'd like a clearer definition of what it is, more specifically, that we're looking for and how lengthy it would be.
City Attorney Flower, yes.
This is a suggestion from the staff, and I'd be my pleasure to produce whatever length or form of report or memorandum the council wishes.
In other words, what are we focusing on as we're doing the research, and how is it to be organized?
I think, well, let's. Do you have an answer to that question at this point?
I do not.
Okay. Councilmember Udi, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do have a concern, but I'm going to defer to another lawyer here. Because this looks like it's a targeted tax to the Huntington Library, and I think what we're after is a way to recover some of the fees that the city experiences, whether it's the San Marino Auto Classic or visitors to Huntington or whatever it might be over the years. I don't think it's a targeted tax, but I think it's a way for us as a city to recover some of the expenses we incur. So I would like a broader look at this, and I would like it, this will sound bad and I apologize, but not from a lawyer and how you can't do it, but from somebody, how can we navigate the waters and accomplish this? But I'll defer to Gretchen. And I say that
we are talking now about, and that's a good point. It never considered me. It never crossed my mind in dealing with this. It may deal with the San Marino Motor Classic, which usually comes and asks for a waiver of fees or offers some other recovery. But I think it concerns me, being that the Vice Mayor and I are both members of Rotary, and Rotary benefits substantially from that, whether or not that's in grounds for us to disqualify ourselves from this. I don't think it is. We're merely members of the group.
I don't think
I'm going to have to, ask that I have further chance to explore that and talk with you both about the relationship between Rotary and the Auto Classic, because I honestly didn't know there was a relationship there.
Well, I will tell you generally, we help put it on by volunteering, and then we get the benefit is we're one of the benefactors. Rotary is, and we use that money. Now, I'm not an officer of the club. I am not. I'm merely a member at this point, and I'm not sitting on any board. So, to a great extent, be like a resident. That wouldn't preclude me from doing that.
And my purpose of mentioning the Auto Classic, it just came to mind, is so it's not laser targeted to Huntington. It's much broader. Different events or facilities within the city that start to use and require the fire department and streets and sewers and water, that there's an opportunity for us to recover some of those expenses as appropriate.
And it also, that's a good point, it also gets back to the fee schedule. Because we do charge people to use our facilities, and the idea being is that they're going to pay, that is a cost recovery for us. But this is something different since we don't have, that's a park-related matter. But I'm going to let Councilmember Shepherd Rami, I'm going to call you Gretchen. Shepherd Rami to ask a question or address this issue, because I believe she has some insight.
Well, I only offer this because I was interested in this subject as well after speaking with members of our community on this. And the language as it's written, asking for a research memo about municipal taxation is problematic for us, and that we need to consider, I believe it's called payments in lieu of taxation, that a lot of nonprofits in various cities offer. Nonprofit institutions from universities and museums that pay to do that very thing that we're discussing, which is what Councilmember Udi brought up, that to help us recover costs from those institutions that are fixed. And it even extends, I do think that we should think of it more broadly as well, whether it's a single event and the park fee service to do something like San Marino Auto Classic, which brings a lot of people, really extends beyond just the park usage for our community members, our police and fire. So we have some events in town that do require greater examination. And so my suggestion is that we take some additional time and ability to get input from Pasadena, some surrounding cities, and do the legal research involved in this just informally before we approach city attorney to issue an opinion. But that this would be something that we'd look at in both a broader scope, so it would apply to more people than the Huntington, as well as looking in other directions, because to label it as municipal taxation, we run into problems, and I think that's what probably, generally speaking, other institutions in the past advice by our city attorney has shown us. But there is evidence out there that other institutions do contribute to cities in different ways by these pilot, and so I would like to explore that and speak with city attorney before, and some other community members about doing some research, greater research in that field, and hopefully give us a direction for the council to take.
Yeah, question for the city attorney, can we do that informally, or would we need to direct a subcommittee of the council to study the issue before directing any further research from the city attorney?
I think my preference would be the subcommittee approach, so there's a chance to kind of flesh out these ideas, because there's a couple different concepts floating around right now, and so I don't see this coalescing to a clear question for me to research and present on that's going to really address what everybody wants. And so perhaps if you could direct me to work with a subcommittee of 2 members of the council to, work up some of these options and identify where the council wants me to research, we could perhaps return with a more targeted idea of what concepts you want me to review. Some of these issues may not necessarily be legal issues. They really be more of a, what are some of our policy options? So in those realms, I don't want to intrude on the policymaking authority of the council or the policymaking expertise of the staff. So if I can work with a subcommittee to kind of flesh out what ideas are in play, identify which ones are policy questions that really need further study, perhaps from the staff, and which are legal questions that you need me to hone in on, and I can take my run at it from there.
Well, my recommendation would be that we have 2 members that are the legislative liaisons to the city council, and that includes Shepherd, Rami, and Talt. So we could act as that subcommittee and liaison to do further research as to what is in essence related to a legislative issue. But perhaps that's the best way to do it, that we have liaisons, and really in that essence, it might be the best fit.
Sheesh, 3 attorneys working together.
Perhaps we should also look at school district, Eastwood Free, on Dilmore. We have a lot of...
We don't own Dilmore.
No, school district.
Oh, school district.
Yes. If we want to be fair, we should consider all parties They also use the infrastructures. I live right across from it. I see a lot of traffic.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So, if I might, Mr. Mayor, a motion might look something like, instead of the one that we've offered you, is to appoint a subcommittee of council members to be Councilmember Shepherd and Mayor Tall to work with the city attorney and or staff as needed to address issues related to, however you want to sum it up.
What's the acronym? What's the acronym that you suggested? Payment in lieu of?
Payment in lieu of taxes.
Okay.
As pilot.
So appoint a
Is
subcommittee
the
of council members to include Councilmember Shepherd, Rami, and Mayor Tall to work with the city attorney and staff as needed on issues relating to the possibility of a pilot program.
But as a question, since pilot is voluntary, should we look at a few different options that maybe other cities are using in lieu
That's a
of
good
pilot?
point.
I think pilot's
Is
great,
one of the
but it
potential
is-
options.
But it is
Correct.
voluntary.
Pilot or similar study. Vice Mayor, do you have any questions for staff on this issue?
No, I just want to commend the staff for, putting this on the agenda.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this issue? Seeing none?
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Ruck, I know that you have commented on the
Of course.
environmental impact fee.
I have been approaching this thing for several years, yeah. The first thing you want to do is you never want to talk about taxation, it's a fee, because they have a tax exemption with the state legislature, and if you push this as a tax, or any of those people as a tax, whether it's the Getty or everybody else, you'll be up in the state Supreme Court. You're talking about fees, and I have been advocating to start with a $2 fee on admission of the public. You get 600,000 people a year, $2, that's $1.2 million. One night when I was in here arguing, the lady was sitting here, that was Steve Koblick's accountant, and she ran up there and told him, you got a $100,000 donation to keep me quiet, because
That's how that started.
that's exactly how you got the
Now we got it.
$100,000. And she's now back running something for the city of Chicago, but anyway, she sat here and she's been back up there, and you got $100,000 out of the deal. But my point basically is this. Let's start with water. They pump unlimited water from the same aquifer we do. We pay for every gallon of water we take. If they have 600,000 people flushing the toilet once, that's 2 gallons times that, and they get all the free water. Number two, they got free police and fire protection at various points. I've heard it cost the city as much as $250,000, $300,000. I don't know exactly what it is, that point is. Thirdly, they're sitting up there with 130 acres or whatever it is of property that if it were subdivided would provide maybe $25 or $30 million in property taxes. So they get free land use up there and take it out. They bring nothing to the city in terms of people that come in here. The only money you get is 1% of the sales tax that goes through their sales taxable operation up there, like the store and that type of thing. Sewers are another thing. They use our sewers, and an environmental impact fee is vastly needed. I checked with the county sanitation district. They paid less than $4,000 3 years ago for sewer charges. We pay a bundle on our taxes. Look at the bottom line on your tax bill for sanitation district. They pay nothing. They come in here, they tear up our streets and our roads and our infrastructure with their vehicles and with their buses and everything. They give us nothing. And they're sitting up there as a sacred mountain on the hill, and I have nothing against the library from that standpoint. They are a cultural attraction. I have felt that they have some of the people in the City Club and in the Rotary and other places in their pocket. Dennis Neer being one of them. He's a friend of mine, but he's been a steady advocate of nothing for charging those people up there for any of what they get free. They brought that woman in from Pfizer College. The LA Times said she was making $750,000. They were paying Koblick $450,000.
Okay, Gene, can you wrap it up, please?
Yeah. So they got a big salary out of that, and they pay big salaries, and they give nothing to the city. The people that come in here, they don't use our facilities, our shops, or our stores, or anything, so we get no money. We need to impose a fee on them. And And whether it's just one fee for the admission, a couple or $3 or $5 a head. By the way, they raised the fee for all the city people here. If we're members, the fee went up. They raised the fee for people entrance. They get the money, the city gets nothing. We need to get some money out of those dogs. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rupp. So distinctly pointed. Any other further comments? Seeing none. Do I have a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to appoint a subcommittee of the City Council to include Mayor Tolt and Councilmember Shepherd-Romey to work with the city attorney and staff as needed to research issues related to payment in lieu of taxation or related programs.
Strike the word taxation, right?
No, it says in lieu.
That's in lieu of, okay,
In
sorry.
lieu of taxation.
Got it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. We don't need a roll call on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Next item. This is mostly the calendaring of the budget and the strategic financial planning. Mr. Bennett?
This would be to complete what we're doing now, this long-term planning and operational planning. These are corollary items to what you've considered already with the resolution of continuing appropriations. And having been the point person in seven different local governments assembling budgets for the last 30 years, I'll tell you, I've never done this before, recommended a continuing appropriations resolution. It's a first for me as well. Again, though, what's happening here is exceptional in our history. So I feel comfortable doing that with you, and I appreciate your consideration of that. The other thing, we don't want to give the impression, I don't want the council to give the impression to any committee, to anybody in the community, that we're somehow opening up the gates for them to proceed in their own pace. So these recommendations say that there will be accountability from the Financial Planning Committee. You'll be accountable to yourself with the strategic plan, and direct us to bring you the preliminary budget in July, and direct us to make sure that you're adopting it in August.
Any questions by council? Councilmember Jacobowski?
None.
Councilmember Udi?
I'm looking at that first bullet, feeling more comfortable with an April, end of April. Steve, what do you think? Your honor as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's 6
I
weeks.
think we need more time.
Yeah. And that's still, the end of April is still plenty of time to impact the city's budgeting process.
I also have a comment. I think we need to move up the strategic plan to be completed also in April. And I've discussed this with our city manager, and we've relayed our needs to our consultants. So we'd like to put all the timing together. I think that'd be excellent, to be able to then have everything in April, so that then we can act on it in an informed manner, during our preliminary budget and appropriations process during the summer months.
So just to be clear, that would change the due dates of the top two bullet items both to 30 April 2018.
At the time someone makes the motion, they could make that.
I'd like to add one more comment. Since we have discussed and are officially moving to the budget in August, since we're traditionally dark in August, I think we need to comment adding an August meeting to our calendar.
We have discussed that. I think that will be absolutely necessary, that we'll have to have a mid-August meeting. Traditionally, the city is dark during that time period, but that's based upon the old agrarian calendar. The meeting would be August 8th.
I'm just curious, directing a question to staff. Are design review and building also dark in that month, or are we operating around the deadlines and dates that they already have scheduled? So I do want to keep that in mind as we pick a date, but as we announce a date, we have to work around their existing schedule, which may be different.
Well, let's just move forward with an understanding that we're going to have a meeting in August.
Okay.
And we will confer subsequently as to that date.
Just wanted to make sure that we were on the same page and having an August meeting.
Vice Mayor? No comment. Any member, comments from the member of the public? See none. Do I have a motion on these bullet points?
Sure, I move that it is recommended.
I move to
I move to complete the round of long-term and operational planning by establishing the following timelines. The Long-Term Strategic Financial Planning Committee complete its work and place on public record by 30 April 2018. The city's strategic plan be completed and placed on the public record by 30 April 2018. The preliminary fiscal year 19 budget be considered by the City Council in July 2018, and the City Council adopt its adopted fiscal year 19 budget in August 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. We can do this by general voice. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Those pass. Now, let's move to the next one, but I want to be very careful on that, being that second bullet point. Make a lump sum payment of $221,575. That is a lot of money. And so what I would like to do is pull that out of the discussion and make it separate. And then we can decide that after we decide the other three, if that is acceptable to you.
Absolutely. If I would introduce the OPEB is the acronym, Other Post-Employment Benefits. This is when the governments agree to pay a portion or all, in some cases, of a retiree's medical insurance on an ongoing basis. It's subject to actuarial study, a lot like a pension, because it's a cost that has an indeterminate future. The actuary, in this case, sets up what is called an annual required contribution. It's a target that's suggested that the government hit. It's not mandatory. It will be. I pretty much know this in the future. This will happen. But what you have in governments, this is the topic that a lot of communities don't want to talk about. The pension's in the light, but they don't want to talk about their OPEB liability, and they are of similar scale in many communities to their pension problem. In San Marino, $222,000 as an OPEB liability will make you the star of the show, and you already are for having such a small liability. Instructing us to pay all of the ARC, the annual required contribution every year, costs us on an operating basis an extra $20,000 a year. Currently, we're paying about $185,000. The current ARC is $205,000. So it's an immediate increase in your operating budget by that amount. You cap your liability from growing, in theory, by making the ARC payment. We talked last month about the state of the Capital Projects Fund. There's a deficit at June 30th of $329,000. Capital Project Fund, it relies entirely on transfers from the general fund. We don't know exactly how, at June 30th of this year, how the Projects Fund will look in terms of deficit. My expectation is it will still have one. This would be instruction to us to transfer that amount by June 30th to make it a zero balance in this fund when you see your financial statements next year.
Thank you. You have any
Oh, I'm sorry, I
comments
forgot the last
on?
point. We talked last month also about just some housekeeping. There are dormant accounting funds that still appear on our financial statements. One in particular that tickles me is a $10 balance in the Assistance to Firefighters grant and a $21,000 balance in the Granada Assessment District number 2. Both of these are positive. They fold into the general fund. And I believe it was $2,300 on a former county park grant that is a deficit amount. General fund ends up benefiting just a bit, but our books are cleaner. We show people that we're paying attention and we're taking steps in what we do here.
Thank you. Councilmember Jacobowski, do you have any questions?
No.
Councilmember Udi?
No.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami?
No, thank you.
Vice Mayor?
No.
I have none. Any comments from the public on these 3 bullet points? Seeing none. Oh, yes.
Not technically a member of the public, I just saw this barreling towards the motion and wanted to make a recommendation that the motion be slightly reformulated pursuant to section 2.0503 of the city code, which states the city council shall not give any orders or directions to employees under the city manager's direction. I would recommend that the motion be reformulated to say, I move to direct the city manager.
It all goes through is Marla.
So noted, thank you. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion. I move to direct the city manager to implement the following for the fiscal 19 budget. Pay the OPEB annual required contribution, the ARC, as a matter of annual budgetary practice. Include a transfer amount from the general fund adequate to eliminate the capital projects deficit and eliminate dormant accounting funds from the city's general ledger and collapse outstanding excess or deficit balances into the general fund for the fiscal year ended 30 June 2018.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion's made and seconded. Let's have a roll call on this.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami?
Yes.
Councilmember Udi?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huang?
Yes.
Mayor Tall?
Yes. Mr. Better, could you now address item number 2?
Optional. You don't have to do it. The idea here is to move to the head of the class, San Marino, where we eliminate an OPEB liability. It does cost you $222,000 to do it. The financial statements are going to have one piece of debt, pending our research, and that is the pension obligation bonds, and we're going to have a pension ongoing issue currently under study by the committee. I think of the Judds here, why not me? They had a song, and I say, why not San Marino not have an OPEB liability?
Well, thank you for the reference to the Judds. Councilmember Jacobowski, do you have any questions regarding this item?
Not so much a question as a comment. Like some of the other issues that we've addressed, I certainly would like input from our financial planning group.
Thank you. Councilmember Udi?
If we don't pay the 221, what happens to that liability?
We've already decided to pay the ARC in full, so theoretically it doesn't grow from year to year.
So it just sits there?
Just sits there.
So it's a liability, no interest, no charges, it just sits on the books?
Sits right underneath the net pension obligation on the net position statement, it does.
Okay.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami?
I also appreciate the suggestion. I know we had this discussion about OPEB between us, and I appreciate you bringing this forward. I also echo what Councilmember Jacobowski said, and I know that you're both on the long-term financial planning committee, and I would be interested to have their input as to whether this would be a wise thing to do, because as Mayor Tall pointed out, this is a significant sum that we need to take into consideration for our overall strategic plan and our long-term financial plan. So my only concern, I don't know if there's a rush on this particular item or whether this can be dealt with at our April meeting when we'll have reports that maybe could encompass a recommendation in this regard. And if that would be the best approach, because then the financial committee can take all of the potential financial considerations into account at that time. This could be made part of their decision-making process, or asked for, not decision-making, but a recommendation could be developed by that committee.
It fits hand in glove with what you've done on the resolution of continuing appropriations. This is exactly the point. There are things coming up, there are things that we're confronting for the first time, there are things that we want to change. This is a great opportunity, and yes,
I agree.
We can do it.
Thank you.
What if we don't pay this amount? This will set the book until 2024?
No, this is distinct from the pension obligation bonds, which is
Different.
piece of debt that the city has until then. This is an employment-related liability because the city pays a small portion of medical insurance for retirees.
Oh, so if we don't pay now, how much do we pay every year?
We're paying $205,000 for the next, at least the next year. The actuarial studies, this is GASB 45, they're required every 2 years where the ARC goes under review. I don't expect, in our case, with such a small post-employment promise we've made retirees here, I don't expect any substantive change there, and that's certainly good. But we'll be paying $205,000 toward this.
So how much saving are we talking about here if we pay it right now?
It's not a matter of savings. It's a matter of eliminating a long-term liability. Maybe I'm missing something, I'm sorry.
But you were just talking about the ARC, right?
Right.
And I think we're talking about the OPEB, paying down to 221.
And Josh, I apologize, this is a question that actually I have for you that I should have had answered by now. Does the liability, this $221,000, impact the calculation of the ARC?
No.
So it's not like the pension?
No.
No, I interpreted Josh's answer to that 221,575 just sits there as a liability forever.
That's what I thought. So,
with no other impact.
If we file bankruptcy, you can look it up.
Any other further questions? Are there any comments from the public on this issue?
I just have a question, Josh. Are you saying that it costs $205,000 a year as an ongoing obligation of today's cost for that benefit? Did I understand you correctly?
With your permission.
Yes, please.
$205,000 a year is to make the payments on the ongoing obligation. The $222,000 is an accrued liability. We're not penetrating that with the annual contribution of $205,000. The numbers are real similar. I know that they kind of seem the same.
205 will prevent the 221 from growing.
Exactly, thank
You're
you.
keeping even with the cost on an annual basis of 205 on the present liability, right?
I'm sorry, I forgot
You're
that.
keeping even with the annual cost of 205 a year. This is just sitting on the books as
Precisely, we're keeping even with what we have to do on an ongoing basis. And actually, we don't have to, this is optional for cities to pay their ARC. That's exactly why a lot of communities are in such trouble. $16.5 million liability in South Pasadena.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'm not sure we're ready to make a motion on this, given the discussion as to kicking this to the Strategic Financial Plan as part of their April report. And if I do not hear a motion, that's what's going to happen. So unless someone wants to make a different motion to have this as part of the financial planning, but I don't think that's necessary.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Obviously, it's at your pleasure whether you'd like to assign this to the Long-Term Financial Planning Committee or not. I will tell you this has not been on the horizon right now. We have been discussing the pension issue, but we have not been discussing OPEB issues. So this would add an item to their agenda. I still imagine the report could come back by the end of April, but this is a different item. It is not the same as the pension item and would require diving into more information than we've given them on the issues that they were already.
Correct, but it is a liability, and someone's asking to come out.
It's a liability, but it's a lot easier to understand than the pension.
Thank God for that.
But we could appoint it to them without a motion. Okay. That would be what I would request if I didn't hear a motion.
I think we've heard what you said. If there's no motion on this item, I'm sure Josh would be happy to move to the next one.
Glad that you finally heard what I said.
Finally is it.
Okay, there being no motion, please move on to the last.
The final motion is just to tell us to update this budget calendar according to what you've done tonight.
Any discussion? Seems merely procedural. Any comments from the public? Seeing none, can I get a motion, please?
I'll go ahead. I move that the city's Fiscal year 19 budget calendar be revised to document all actions of the city council taken with respect to this item.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Let's go ahead and just do a roll call on this because there's been money involved in some of this.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Romney.
Yes.
Councilmember Eady.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Huang.
Yes.
Mayor Tall.
Yes. Okay, now item number 13, who it looks like David will be giving the staff report.
Mayor and members of the City Council, good evening. So the item before you is a recommendation to approve an amendment to the professional services agreement with Mavericks Klein & Day for professional accounting services. This is following on the presentation that Josh just made with respect to some of the financial planning, some of the financial reporting, some of the financial control methodologies. The ad hoc committee recommended to the city council approved an accountant position in the administrative services department. Upon further internal review, we identified that we need additional support services within that function. That was to build and rebuild our financial systems, our processes, our financial reporting, and our financial controls. Essentially, we are using and require a much higher level person than an accountant. When we went out to the marketplace to look at qualified candidates for accountants, we find that it's difficult to find accountants that have that much higher level professionalism to bring in those services that are required at this time. We do recommend that the City Council approve the amendment. In looking at the budget allocation for the positions, this contract does not require an additional appropriation. It just allows us to extend the contract for the additional needed services in the interim while we do the budget review. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Councilmember Jacobowski, you have a question?
So what you're saying is you would be continuing with the two individuals already in place?
Correct.
And I see that this is a Sacramento firm. Out of curiosity, how do they do their local recruiting for, say, our position?
So they do have an office in Rancho Cucamonga as well. So they have multiple offices throughout the state. And Richard and Adriana come to us from the Rancho Cucamonga office.
Thank you.
Councilmember Yu?
Yeah, a couple, I guess, make sure I understand this properly, and then the question. And they understand it properly is the pipes were broken and water is going everywhere. And you looked at alternatives to replumb the accounting system, and that's where these people were found.
Correct.
And so they're fixing processes and systems and procedures and not just, paying bills and entering debits and credits.
That is correct.
And I'm assuming that level of expertise is required to complete the project to get into plumbing alternate.
That is correct.
And which I can buy and understand, because I think it's probably going to be easier for a new person to come into, the pipes and the plumbing being all fixed rather than coming in and saying, fix it. But my question now is that if it was for 3 months for about $13,000, why does it go to $80,000 for 5 months?
So the costs for the 3 months, we're going to exhaust the authority under the city manager's authority under the purchasing protocol of $30,000. Extending out to June 30th and utilizing the same amount of services, the same amount of hours per week, will extend that to that $93,000. The $93,000 does encompass the $30,000.
And if I might add a piece of clarification, the 12,000 number that you have here is 12,960. That's what we've already paid, but that's not as of today's date number, because we haven't gotten billed yet.
Okay, so what's the monthly run rate today?
So when we looked at it, December was $2,060, January was $10,000, we expect February to be in that $10,000 range.
10,000. So 5 months ago times 10 months should be 50,000?
We calculated the 30,000 will exhaust somewhere in early to mid-March, so the balance is between remaining
I think Councilmember Udi is trying to do the math, which is not my forte either, but it's looking like the amount of investment is a little high, but I see Josh coming to the microphone too.
I know, Josh, we want to get out of here tonight. And then I want to, lead the conversation to that point we brought off before about taking a look at the staffing for the finance department. Because I'm sitting here thinking, what's the better investment? Is it a better investment to get the finance staffing done now, or get the finance staffing done as soon as the plumbing is complete, or is it get the financing staffing done at budget time? And all my instincts are, let's full court press and get the plumbing connected, and then get the staff in as soon as we can, because I think will be a much more efficient operation and longer term, lower cost, and more efficient if we approach it. So I kind of like to weave these two things into the discussion. I think with this agreement, we can cancel it within, 5 days notice or something?
Yeah, our contract does allow us to cancel the contract, and we can certainly do that at any time.
And if we wanted to put a sense of urgency on it, maybe, a motion at the end of the discussion is extend this contract for 2 months, and let's really see how quickly we can get the plumbing done. And at the same time, take a look at what you think the long-term staffing recommendation is for finance.
So I'm happy to discuss that piece when you conclude with this piece, if that's something you're interested in.
You keep on talking about plumbing, we're gonna have to take a break. No, thank you, but it actually makes a lot of sense because basically it's two different hats. You need the contractor to come in, and then you need the water maintenance guys to handle it.
Different skill set to create than to maintain.
Yeah, no, I follow.
For a person who's very literal, and the plumbing metaphors have gotten lost on me somewhere along the way, I think the idea would be that we wanted to instruct our city manager to start the process of consideration of an employee on a contract basis to replace. We will continue this, if I'm understanding, on a short-term basis, is what Councilmember Udi said, and at the same time to ask our city manager to start the exploration of hiring somebody for a permanent position to take up some of this responsibility?
Yeah, I got it different. I think
Okay.
I heard on the bullet
That's the
we
problem with
removed.
plumbing.
The bullet we removed before was city manager and staff want to come back to us with a recommendation on what the finance department should look like.
Of staffing overall?
Yeah, period. What does that org chart look like for
Okay.
finance and
I
accounting
understand
and
now.
financial analysts?
Thank you.
And in the interim, we're still trying to fix the system here.
Which is why we need the current firm to continue their work. And so perhaps we don't adopt the appropriation of the entire sum recommended here.
So if you're
But
going,
we have to
if
do
you're going to
something
tie them
because we're
together,
above.
then I would like a chance to speak when it's appropriate, and I can lay out some
Yeah,
options.
I mean, it's got to be fixed. Changing firms would be inefficient.
So are you saying that we should just, give them 2 months?
Right now, I'm just talking out loud, looking for a
But-
reaction, but I am less comfortable with a 4 or 5 month extension because the job expands the fiscal time allotted. I'm more comfortable with a couple month extension to try to put some heat in the kitchen to get it done a little quicker.
And also what happens after June, if we cannot find a permanent person?
Well, I mean, I think we would be looking at a recommendation for what finance and accounting looks like, and then we pull the trigger and we staff for that, and as we staff up, these outside services, get turned down.
And since they have such a broad scope of work, which is helpful to see all the possibilities, it would be helpful for us to get a monthly update to see what is occurring. And can they do something in helping us integrate more with Springbrook?
So lots of things I want to address.
And we're not ready for you yet.
The answer is yes. The answer is yes to that.
The answer is yes, okay.
I think that would be a huge help. That would put the faucet to the plumbing, I think, if we can tie it all in with our existing system, IT system that we have. It's not sophisticated, but it is in place. And I understand, David, you have been speaking with those folks anyway. Fabulous.
Vice Mayor, do you have any, or do you have, I'm sorry, do you have any further questions?
I would
Vice
like to
Mayor?
hear from city manager.
We'll get to it in
I
a
understand,
second.
I understand.
You're not ready.
Clearly. We're
Vice
still
Mayor.
talking about plumbing.
No question.
I do have a question, that is, given what you've seen and maybe Josh could help us answer this question. Given what you've seen them done, given you want them to do, how long will it actually take to get the plumbing fixed?
So I actually want to jump in and start off the answer to this in case there's anything that Josh wants to add afterwards. They're doing two things for us right now. They are doing day-to-day accounting.
Right.
We have a load of day-to-day accounting work that needs to get done. And so part of what we're telling you is that isn't all that they're doing. They're also doing, not plumbing, but they're fixing some of the broken systems that we've had in the past that have led to some of the audit findings that we've had, some of the financial reporting problems that we've had. They are literally fixing and establishing and reestablishing things that we've had on an ongoing basis. But I don't want you to have the impression that that's all they're doing. They are not just special project people, they are also helping with our day-to-day workload. So it's not just a matter of how quickly can we get the special projects done and get them out. We still have day-to-day accounting work that needs to get done.
But it'll be at a different level when the system is
Yes.
fixed.
And that's
What would that?
Okay, hold on, people. Could I get an answer to my question? If it is possible, how long do we think it will take for them to finish the special project part of what they're doing?
It is more of what the city manager said. We have a firm that's doing our day-to-day books for us.
No, I understand that. I'm asking you, they're not only doing the day-to-day, and the day-to-day requires, as Councilmember Udi pointed out, a certain level of expertise. The extra expertise that we're seeking through this firm is also to help us develop and fix the systems that were not working. My question is, as to that element, how long do you think it's going to take for them to complete that part of what they do on a day-to-day basis?
I think that the consistency that we're starting to establish, in the December charges were much lower because this firm was onboarding these employees and taking them gradually away from other assignments. That's why we paid so little beginning in December. When we hit the consistent 3 days a week of staffing between these two individuals, I believe it takes another 4 to 5 months to establish a reasonable certainty that our books are being handled in a consistent and predictable way. I'll give you qualitatively what I walked into was a misclassification of funds and the inability by the individual here to answer basic questions. What I found in talking to the former contractor, she told me, well, we were just doing what the former director did. That's a lot of damage, council, and it's never been created here. We have never had a professional controllership function over our books. So it's not just fixing, it's creating something for the first time.
We also, I know it must be frustrating not to get a straight answer to your question entirely. The challenge for us is they're literally still turning over rocks and finding things.
No, and I appreciate that.
We don't.
No, I appreciate that every day is a new adventure.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So we've had them recently, we're still continuing to have them. I think Josh is right that in a perfect world, if we could do this, we would do it for another several months to be sure that those things get fixed, that we aren't turning over any new rocks, and that we have a system in place that's marching along, someone else can just fall into
The recommended is to continue to June 30th, 2018. And do we feel confident that that is sufficient time for them to build, fix, do what they, to get us in the right position where we can move forward with a greater degree of confidence than we have had based upon what we've uncovered?
Absolutely, and what you need is when a permanent employee comes in, you need the handoff.
No, I understand.
Yeah, so it's dependent on the recruitment, which has not been successful in this community before. We haven't cast the right net for this position.
So we feel confident that they can do it by June 30th, but I will say that the ability to maintain it going forward depends on your decisions on the salary structure.
Well,
Which is the other piece.
I'm going to reopen for questions.
And Mayor, I think what would be helpful is if we did have that monthly update, it wouldn't have to be lengthy, but we could hear about those eureka things that they're finding and seeing where it's taking them in the process. They should be able to self-assess. They may need more time if they do uncover more, or if they're moving along with a target date. Don't you think?
I don't disagree. I would certainly hope that that level of visibility comes out, and that's a good idea. Do you have anything more to add at this point?
To what specifically, Mr.
Well, you've been over there chomping at the bit to talk, and here's your opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak to Councilmember Udi's suggestion that we think about the long-term staffing. So part of the predicament that we're in is that in the public sector, typically the normal cycle to bring staffing recommendations is during your budget process. And that's not because of just a bureaucratic rule of we just like to do things once a year. It's because when you get a budget package, you have the opportunity to see everything. You see the big picture, you see where we might be asking for more money, you see where we might think we can save money, and you can evaluate the budget picture as a whole. And it's important, especially in a community like San Marino, where we're trying to be as efficient as possible, to give you all of the information. If I bring you a staffing proposal sooner, which I can, if this is a priority that you want to have, I could bring it to you next month. And you could make a decision on it. The challenge for you, not so much the challenge for us, but the challenge for the five of you, is you'll be making that decision in a budgetary vacuum. So we won't be bringing you any of the rest of the items. If it turned out that there were, I don't want to freak anybody out, if there were staff reductions, or if there were cost savings in other places that we were going to be bringing you during the budget process, you won't see those when we bring you the proposal for staffing the finance department. And it's really at your pleasure. If you would like to make the decision sooner, there's nothing stopping you or me from putting that on the agenda for consideration in March, figuring out what the right staffing level is, beginning the recruitment process and getting in who we get in and hopefully have a handoff, or we could even reduce down the number of hours that the contractors are working as we have somebody coming in running it day to day. Maybe they're only here 1 day a week. There are all sorts of options if you want to authorize a staffing plan sooner, then we can recruit sooner. But until there are appropriate budgeted positions on the books, I don't have any authority to fill positions. So their choice is really yours, and it's your calculation of how you want to evaluate spending money. It might be that you see the cost of the contract for the consultants and you say, whoa, that's a lot, and we could save money from that if we move the staffing decision up. And then we move it up. Or you might say, well, I want to see what else is in the package before I make a decision on staffing, so now I want to wait till the budget cycle. But if we're going to wait till the budget cycle, we have to be able to get there, and that's what the contractors are for. So really, it's a question about your pleasure and how you want to evaluate that information.
Thank you. Councilman Udi, do you have any further questions?
Yeah, not questions, where I view this. I think we want to see the staffing plan sooner rather than later, so we can understand it. Even if we 1,000% agree with it, it would take 2-3 months to recruit and find the right people. That could, if we don't start sooner, we're probably going to continue more our engagement of the auditing firm to do accounting work. And then the proposal on the auditing firm is to extend through June 30, which is 4 months. I'm wondering if we don't say 3 months, again, to try to get a sense of urgency to see if we can complete the fixing of the system sooner so that our run rate comes down. And I bet our highest quality, most efficient, lowest cost long-term solution is going to be get the right staff on board as soon as we can and give them a fixed system.
Council Member Shepherd.
I guess I was saying the same thing before, that I would encourage us to consider moving forward with this, even though the city manager points out it's not going to be taken in as part of the overall budget process, but I think it's economical and wise if we move toward analyzing what our staffing needs are, because we all admit that there is going to be, changes in the department under Mr. Beda that are necessary, and that our city manager can move forward with that earlier than the budget process in order to realize greater savings in regard to this firm doing work that maybe we can have other levels of accounting skills, and I would like to see that done. So I appreciate the offer and the analysis, and that's part of it, how we want to weigh it. But I think for our greater cost efficiency, I would like to see it sooner as well, and that we move forward with that out of the regular budget process. But I would like to hear my other colleagues' comments, because you have been through the budget process before, so you bring a light and considerations that I don't yet know.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
I'm feeling a little bit confused at this point, only because I thought that part of what we needed the next few months for was to fine-tune exactly the items that we do need, since it's obvious that it's going to be different than the recommendation that was originally made. And I was under the impression we're not yet at that point. So perhaps Josh could give us clarification?
I think the question is, Josh, if I may, do you think that it could be done by May 31st? The resolution of what we've uncovered, put it into a system that could work, so we'd be extending this contract by until May 31st as opposed to June 30th.
But also knowing the specific items we then want to more permanently look at, positions.
If I could interject, our delightful city attorney has pointed something out. That we're not actually seeking a contract amendment in terms of date. The date of the contract is already set through June 30th, 2018. What we're looking for is an extension of money. So you can accomplish the same thing, it's just that your terminology is different. Instead of saying May 30th, you would say, instead of approving 90,000, you would approve 70,000. But it's a money issue, not a date issue.
To clarify the question, if you would again, please restate.
I'm feeling confused. I know that the thought has been presented that we start to move forward on a recruitment. It would be an appropriate description of what we want.
I have heard that staff would like to make a recommendation to us on what they think the finance department should look like. So that's number of people and job descriptions.
So,
and that's not recruiting, but I would like to get visibility on what that looks like. You know, the sooner the better as we go into the budgeting process, that will help give us some clarity.
So if I may, let's deal with that issue first. Do we want to direct the city manager to prepare her report regarding staffing in our accounting, accounting department immediately, or wait until it comes up as part of our 2018-2019 budget? What I'm hearing from Councilman Udi is Councilman Shepherd Rami is that they would much rather see us move quarter and not wait, get the report back, then start in process the effort to fill those positions in the meantime.
Yeah, you can get the report back and see how we react to it. We may say absolutely full speed ahead, or we may say not sure yet.
Exactly.
Instead of waiting, correct.
Okay.
On that issue, do you have any further questions?
No.
Vice Mayor?
Yes, so by the calculation, if you calculate that 30,000 would expire by mid-March, so that's about 7,000 a month. So can we appropriate something like a month, that would be the 56,000?
We're going to deal with that issue in a second. The issue we're dealing with right now, Vice Mayor Young. Pardon me. That's what I said. Is that we, whether we direct the city manager to prepare a report on the personnel in the accounting report now.
Structure of the.
Right. Or do we wait until it becomes a part of the budget process? Do you have any questions with respect to that?
No, I don't have any questions.
Is there any public comment with respect to that? Seeing none, do I have a motion on the issue as to whether or not to direct the city manager to move forward immediately with preparing a report as to the structuring of the county department?
Yes, I move for the city manager to bring us next month her proposal for the staffing of the accounting and finance department.
Is there a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the city manager is directed to begin the process of preparing the report back to us next month with respect to her vision of the accounting department. Now, let's move on to the other issue, and that is the level of appropriation.
So hearing that, I would suggest that it's not 7,000 because we had that strange first month where they were just getting in, it was 2,000. So I would ballpark approximately 10,000 to give us a not to, per month, to give us a not to exceed, keeping in mind that we're already going to hit that 30,000. As a side note, I just want to assure Councilmember Jacobowski that I can produce that before the month for that.
And feel confident. That was my question, about you feeling confident.
I can
knowing
do that, and
this.
I can feel confident.
That's
If you're comfortable dealing with it out of budget process, I can.
perfect. Thank you.
So I think that if you want to consider that $10,000 number beginning in mid-March, so we're thinking maybe, as you described, the recruitment process will take a couple of months. If you think about an extension of 4 months, you're probably looking at an additional $40,000, which would be a total appropriation of $70,000.
And why 70,000 again? Because the
It will already
30,000,
be 30.
it will already be 30.
Right, so I can approve up to 30, but I can't go beyond 30, and if you're going to approve an additional 40, you're setting a total not to exceed value.
Got it. Okay. Are there any questions, Councilmember Jacobowski, with respect to this issue? Councilmember Udi?
No, that'll take us through May?
Ish. Right.
A short May.
A short May.
Pick a number that gets us towards the end of May. That'll shorten it 1 month and just try to give a sense of urgency. I know there is one, but extend it to them.
I think my preference would be 80,000, if you're comfortable with that. If you say 70,000, we'll do everything we can work within that.
About 70.
Then why did you ask?
Well, it was a question.
And so my answer would be.
It can always be extended.
It can always be extended. I would be most comfortable with 80. If you choose 70, we will work within that, or you'll get to talk about this again.
Okay, so the question's been asked. Councilmember Shepherd Rami, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Does anybody else have any issue with, wants to raise 70 versus 80, or should we just put it for a motion? And the first one that pops up could pop up the motion. Do I have a motion?
I do have a suggestion for the motion.
What's it?
Sorry. Just because the way the recommended motion is structured in the staff report, it is in reference to an amendment that was already prepared and has been executed by the consultant. We're now talking about doing a different version of that. We'll have to go back and get it changed again. So it says approve the amendment. I would recommend it say the motion would be in keeping with what's proposed, approve an amendment to the contract with a not to exceed amount of 70 or was it 80?
Well, that's
however the motion goes,
That's-
and then to authorize the city manager to execute such an amendment.
Thank you.
Let's move this forward. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve, you're right.
And amendment.
An amendment to the contract with Guaranteed.
Good job.
I'm so not going to miss Trinity Day with a not to exceed amount of $70,000 and authorize the city manager to execute
Such
an amendment.
So the number is 70,000. Do I have a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami.
Yes.
Councilmember Udi.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wong.
Yes.
Mayor Todd.
Yes. The motion has been approved. Let's move to, so we've dealt with those two issues. We've dealt with them. Let's move to the authorization to procure citywide mobile cell services and cell phones. Who is giving the report?
Resources Manager David Strong.
David?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. So this item is essentially to ask the City Council to shift policy direction from a technology allowance program that has a limited number of users, and where we don't get effective use of those dollars, to authorize the city manager to engage in a self-service plan that allows us to use those existing dollars in a much wider capacity, where we can leverage that technology on a greater basis. In comparing to what we currently have, the technology allowance is a tool that enables us to use cell technology, but by making the policy shift and going away from a technology allowance program to a self-service program, we can leverage those dollars in a much cheaper type of self-service plan, as indicated. In the staff report, I gave you a comparison that utilizing the same existing dollars, we can get up to a total of 70 lines. We're not recommending 70 lines, it's just an illustration to show how we can leverage those existing dollars for increased efficiency and capacity with those same dollars. This is an effort to obtain the right tools at the right time, and being much more efficient and cost-effective with what we do, and when we look at these programs internally and how we deliver services to the community. With that, I would make a recommendation to City Council to adopt the recommendation as presented, understanding that we're not recommending 70 lines, it was there for illustration purposes. I'll be able to answer any questions that you may have.
I just want to make the same sort of correction to the proposed recommendation, and that is that we would, on item number 2, that we'd be directing the city manager to commence city requirement and not staff. Councilmember Jacobowski, do you have any questions?
No.
Councilmember Udi?
I understand the desire to do this and support it, makes sense that the communication device, since public information goes through it, to be owned by the city and used by the employee. I am concerned about the 28 people that currently have cell phone allowances. I get scared spitless when I see the equivalency of 70 people using it. I'm afraid of a term I call overhead creep that you kind of see filtered into the discussions tonight. So I agree with the policy change to go to city-owned devices, but I would love to put restraints on how many people get the phones and hold the usage down as much as possible.
And I believe, to be fair to the city manager, that will be up, that falls with her bailiwick. And we either give them the tool and she decides how best to use it. And we can't micromanage that from a standpoint of what our various responsibilities are. But I agree with the suggestion as to being very careful with this.
Yeah, and I would think that would be perhaps one of the operating metrics we want to see is how many phones have been issued.
Thank you. Councilmember Shepherd Rami.
I want to congratulate our city manager with coming up with this and thinking that this will make our city staff and leadership maybe more efficient way to use that money. It is coming in under what the current payout is, that's my understanding, so this is a cost savings right from the get-go, which I sincerely appreciate. I also have concerns that we've discussed about the extension of this to more city employees, but I leave that to our city manager's discretion, and the fact that it is going to be a reduced cost to the city, then I congratulate you in bringing this forward as a cost-saving measure in an area where we really need to pay less and can get better services and have better services for our city residents. So thank you for doing that. And I trust that you will be efficient in its operation, and I know you will.
Vice Mayor.
Only I'm concerned about maintenance happening. There's cracked screens. Harry, who maintains that? I mean, is it the the employees of responsibility, or?
So in the event of a phone that is damaged, as with any city tool that we provide, it is the employer's responsibility. One of the elements with this program through the CMAS purchasing program is the highly discounted price of the technology units. We continue to get those units at that significantly reduced price through that CMAS purchasing program.
Thanks.
Any further questions? What type of phone are we talking about? I mean, here's my concern is that it's not really a concern.
iPhone 10.
Was that? No, it is. I want to make sure that since we're being innovative in this idea, that whatever tool we buy can help with that innovation. And that is not just taking pictures of something that has to be done, but also it's a means by which to immediately communicate issues. It's a means by which to reflect time and cost spent on somebody, on something when they're out in the field, that we can capture that in order to add to the metrics that Councilmember Udi constantly talks about. What we're going to get is that type of device, is that correct?
Yes, so all the devices are what they refer to as smart devices, smartphones essentially, where we can put various apps, applications on them, including some of the apps that we currently use to manage the street water median, parks median water system. There are other apps that we utilize internally that we can utilize for that process as well. And it's not limited just to cell phone technology devices. There's also discounts on iPads and other tablet type of equipment. So, and those are also significantly reduced in price on the CMAS account. And again, we're not talking about a wholesale, everybody gets something. We're talking about a very specific targeted use and need where we deploy that service in those devices.
And I understood that we could get up to 70 at the same cost. We're giving 28. Not necessarily that we will go there, and that's going to be left to the city manager. She knows if you.
Majority of you have spoken.
Yes. So,
I'm clear.
She's got it.
So,
So
it only takes 3 out of 5, and you're out. So
I said
you better.
majority of you have spoken.
Okay. Is there any public comment on this issue?
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes, you may.
Under Government Unlimited, is it the presumption that whoever has these phones will be using it only for business purposes, even though it is unlimited?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're going to have to write that down, aren't you?
No, that's a no-brainer. But this is city-issued equipment, just like a
On
city-issued
record.
computer.
Thank you.
Absolutely, on record.
Okay.
No, it's-
So we don't have to have one.
You don't have to have one.
Any further public comments? Seeing none? I will gladly hear a motion with respect to, if you're going to make a motion, don't forget to, on item 2, it's to direct the city manager.
I'll go ahead. I move to authorize the city manager to procure a city self-service plan with a not-to-exceed amount of $43,500 and to execute any necessary agreement or service plan documents with the selected self-service provider for self-service and devices. And number 2, direct the city manager to commence any required meet and confer procedures with the hope of reaching agreement to move away from a technology allowance and toward the issuance of a city-issued phone and service plan.
Is there a second?
I second.
Seconded by Councilmember Udi. Could I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Jacobowski.
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Romey.
Yes.
Councilmember Udi.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wong.
Yes.
Mayor Tall.
Yes. Motion passes. Let's move to item 15, our last item, except for public comment at the end. I apologize. But Mr. Throne will be giving this report.
Yes.
You got about 2 minutes.
Yes, you will, Mr. Mayor. I will be brief. The city annually receives federal aid funding through the Community Development Commission of the County of Los Angeles to be used for local community development activities. For San Marino, these activities typically support senior outreach programs and improvements to our city sidewalk. The fiscal year 2019 allocation is $38,787, and for the city to access it, the City Council is obliged to conduct a public hearing and vote to expend these funds on the senior outreach programs and sidewalk improvements. If the City Council approves these activities, they will be included in the upcoming fiscal year 2019 municipal budget. This concludes staff presentation.
Nice.
Very good, thank you. Is there any questions? Councilmember Jacobowski?
No.
Councilmember Udi? No. Councilmember Shepherd Rami?
No.
Vice Mayor?
Could I have 2 minutes?
No. I have no questions. Is there any public comment on this issue?
You have to open a public hearing.
Oh, there will be a public hearing on this
Yes.
matter. Do I hear, open up the public hearing? Thank you. This is my first. Are there any members of the public that would care to comment? Seeing none, I close the public hearing portion, and we will deliberate, exactly. Do I have a motion?
I move to adopt resolution number R1802, a resolution of the City of San Marino, California, adopting the projected use of funds for the Community Development Block Grant Program for fiscal year 2018-2019.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion having been moved and seconded, roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Jacobowski?
Yes.
Councilmember Shepherd Rami?
Yes.
Councilmember Udi?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wong?
Yes.
Mayor Tomlin?
Yes. Written communications, opportunity to announce any written communications pertaining to city received by members of the City Council. You all acknowledge a city writing from a Miss Cordelia Donnelly that was received. I guess there's actually 2 of them, but you will put this where it belongs. And is there any other written communications that anybody received that they'd like to report? Council reports. Susan Jacobowski has a report on the highlights of the training that she went to on behalf of the city.
I'm going to try to talk as fast as Marcella, okay?
Good luck.
I was fortunate to have received training in January from the California League of Cities for new city council members and mayors. There were almost no handouts, and if you wish to see the syllabus, do Google California League of Cities training. It was eye-opening in first realizing that some cities have multiple council members who've served more than 20 years. Some cities with former members in prison for accepting bribes. Each meal I sat with different city representatives. And I'm serious, this is what was just the chatter over the meals. Let's see, where am I? A number of cities where council members have quit soon after taking office because of disenchantment or employment changes. Many cities elect their mayor, resulting in either a separate election for the open seat, or many people there were appointed to fill seats when someone moved into that position. And many of the cities are charter cities, so they set up their own elections. We in San Marino do not have the financial worries that many other cities have. One LA County city has a coastal landslide so severe that partial stabilization will cost $31.3 million per year and $22 million in maintenance over the next 30 years. As for the meat of the training, reminders, as council members, no serial meetings. And this is, I think, tied into the last item we just addressed. Any emails, postings, or phone conversations anywhere by a council member are discoverable. We were advised to think twice about political comments on social media. If it is on our page on Facebook and a counterpoint is strongly posted, we cannot eliminate that posting due to freedom of speech. I found that fascinating. A number of cities use committee reports, which we did tonight. It was nice to see, appointing 2 council members to first research an issue. City managers expect big picture direction from council, not details on how to do it. City managers avoid influence on policy development. City council provides what city manager should do, and the city manager provides how. A good city council team has a different leader on each issue, and the city council gives clear policy and direction to the city manager, and it's okay to continue an item if more info is needed. Since, as I said, hardly any handouts were given, I thought this was one that they referenced that was helpful for all of us, and I'm done. I also spent a few hours with our fire department earlier this month. It was extremely helpful. I got to see a few different things going on at once. When I arrived at the fire department, there was another city's fire engine holding down the fort for us because we had been called to South Pasadena. I then went with our crew, our EMT crew there to see the cleanup of a carport and brush fire where arson was later confirmed, and came back and spoke to the guys about their jobs. And it was very comforting to hear how much they love what they do. And just as one little side note, they talked about, and I think it's firefighter Medina, perhaps?
Not sure which one.
Okay. No, not chief. But anyway, he was talking about how they had gone out on a call recently. They had been there before on this particular call. The resident passed away, and they had come to know the wife over the years. And I was very touched. The next day they brought her flowers. Just a thoughtful move. Thank you.
Yes, I have something.
Yes, the vice mayor has something.
Yes, I attend Los Angeles County Sanitation District meeting on January 24th on behalf of Mayor Todt.
Thank you. Councilmember Udi, do you have any word? Councilmember Shepherd-Romney? I too attended the SCAG meeting. SCAG. Or COG.
It's such an offensive name.
And I know, and actually it's quite fascinating that you bring this group of people together and they all have the same complaints about housing elements and trying to fulfill their obligation under the housing element. We're beginning the process to work on that right now in order to comply with it. But it was really interesting to hear some of these communities complain about how they have to get, find $15,000 in 15,000 units, and we're sitting there with 17. So I was kind of quiet on that. But also, along with the vice mayor, we attended the East Meets West Lunar Celebration, which was quite entertaining. And also, I attended the school board meeting last night as the liaison only, and they continue to discuss the bond issue. Actually, they continue to discuss the construction issue and what they need to improve their facilities. The lunar. Don't lump with me. If you have something to say, say it out loud. Yes. Also, the vice mayor and myself attended the Chinese school lunar celebration, which is always quite entertaining to watch. To watch the entertainment up there. Too, we have a lot of talented people coming from various schools in this city, and it's a joy to see them at work. City manager report we've already done, unless you have anything else. City council calendars in our program. We are going to we're going to direct the city manager to confer individually regarding finding a good meeting time in August to deal with the budget. Public writings. Do we have any public writings to distribute? Seeing none. Public comments. Yes, Mr. Rock.
I just had 2 quick points. I was going to jump in on that CDBG thing because at one point in time we were diverting some of those funds to pay employees' salary, and I wanted to say that I would not like to see that happen again, that if CDB funds are here, they should be used for the purpose for which they're allocated to us, and that's to help engage people in the problems. I wanted to talk briefly about this school bond situation.
Gene, I'm going to cut you off because if you want to talk about school bond issue, talk to the school board, and you have, and I know this body is not going to make, it has no, no part of it, and really why we may or may not agree with you, it is a policy decision that is being made elsewhere, and it is now 8:55. And you're asking us, you're going to talk about an issue over which we have no control. And I want the public to understand it because there is a misperception with respect to our responsibility for that bond, and we have none. So if I may gently request that you save those comments for the school board or any of these meetings. I've heard you speak about it. I don't disagree with what you have to say, but really that is best spent, the energy spent elsewhere.
That's the way you want to take the position. I feel as individuals in the council have an obligation to defend taxpayers on this thing. Here they are, they want to put $62 million into a theater where people can't even get a job when they get theater arts degrees. And the fact of the matter is that these bond issues, they affect us all as taxpayers because bond issues and the parcel taxes were introduced by the legislature to get around Prop 13. And when you look at the cost of these bonds, and I'm just talking about the past bonds, $52 million, the debt service is $109 million, and they're talking about $22 million left to pay. Well, actually, there's $44 million left to pay because they haven't included the debt service for the last 7 years in this. They redeemed them, and then they got to find money somewhere else to do it. So it's all come out of all of our pockets, and you can take that position, but I don't think it's the right position to
Well,
take.
no, Gene, and I don't mean to trample on your First Amendment rights, but it has become, I don't want it to create any misunderstanding that this council has and a responsibility. Now, taxpayers are protected because they have the right to vote, and they can vote it down if they so choose.
Yeah, well, they ran the kids home to their parents and said, let's reduce the bond measure to 55%, and they're passing them.
Well,
everybody else is getting 67% to pass a bond issue, and they may pass it. And if they pass it, even if it's not $148,000, if they knock off the debt service remaining on the balance and bring it down to say 120 or 122,000, million, I'm sorry, it's still 122 million plus the debt service on that, depending on interest rates, going to it's going to be on your tax bill and my bill below the line, part of your total yearly taxes, and it could be $300 million for debt service. Look at the first 2 or 3 bond issues and see what the debt service is, and you can see what it's going to be, even though the interest rates are a little higher.
Thank you.
$2 million became $109 million.
Thank you, Mr. Rock. And again, I would recommend that if anybody has those complaints, they should direct them to our school board. And right now, it's my understanding they've tabled it, but it's better addressed to them, and I do apologize to the extent that you might consider. Okay. The Sacramento City Council will adjourn to the next adjourned regular meeting to be held on Friday, March 2nd, 2018 at 8 a.m. in the Barth Room of the Crowell Public Library, 1890 Huntington Drive, Sacramento, California.